about rocketing migrant numbers in the Channel after a detention centre was firebombed. We're going to be picking that apart later on. That's right, a migrant processing centre plant in Dover was bombed. Obviously, the guy who did it was a dangerous lunatic, but people can't deny now the strength of feeling across the country. Hotels being used, social housing being used, private rental housing being used, talk of giant tent cities. I've got to ask, should charity start at home? GBViews at gbnews.uk. We need to stop talking and start enacting a solution. Just Stop Oil are finishing off their month of protest. They've seen something like 650 of them arrested. Police waste something like 7,500 hours dealing with those orange numpties. But they wanted to go out with a flourish, didn't they? They've spray-painted the Home Office, MI5, and the Bank of England buildings. The public are losing patience. I've lost patience. I lost it a long time ago. If they want to dress like oranges, maybe they have to prepare to be squashed every now and again. And is Halloween unchristian? I've been told that I have to keep this on the desk today, so there we go, a GB News pumpkin. No, don't make any jokes about my fake tan. I ask about whether or not it's unchristian because there's been a complaint, apparently, one of these ridiculous complaints, OK, about a Halloween display outside a train station. Despite it helping to raise hundreds of thousands of pounds for charity, apparently it needs to be cancelled because it's unchristian. I'm going to be discussing that with Christian concerns, so we've gone right to the top. And as always, I want to know what you think about the stories that we're covering today. A couple of big talking points in town for you, ladies and gentlemen. First one, do you care whether or not Suella Braverman really broke that ministerial code 6 times? The other big one, really, is do you think charity should start at home in light of the fact that we're seeing rocketing migrant numbers? GBViews at gbnews.uk. Don't be shy. Before that, it's your latest headlines.
Good afternoon, 3 minutes past 3. I'm Rosie Wright, keeping you up to date today on GB News. The Prime Minister says he has full confidence in the Home Secretary after she admitted breaching the ministerial code on 6 separate occasions. Suella Braverman says she sent government documents to her personal email address on several occasions between September the 6th and October the 16th. Now, writing to the Commons Home Affairs Select Committee, she set out her version of the events that led to her resignation under the former Prime Minister Liz Truss. In the letter, she apologised for breaching the code, saying she'd also said sorry to Rishi Sunak when she was reappointed as Home Secretary. Well, meanwhile, she's under pressure, increasing pressure, over the backlog of migrants arriving in the UK and the conditions of their processing centres. It's understood hundreds of migrants were moved to an already overcrowded facility in Kent at the weekend. An immigration watchdog said they were left speechless by safety problems at the site in Manston. The Immigration Minister, Robert Jenrick, visited the site yesterday and admitted the conditions were challenging. MP Mark Spencer told GB News the government's working hard to fix the problem.
We're working with local authorities. We've invested over £20 million with our local authorities up and down the country to accommodate people in different places around the UK. But the answer is a multiple choice question, if you like. So we need to get on with the Rwanda plan. We need to make sure we break the business model of those people coming across the channel exploiting people, and we need to process them at the other end and make sure we get to the right conclusions as quickly as possible.
Well, the Shadow Minister for Immigration, Stephen Kinnock, says processing backlogs actually encourage people smuggling.
People aren't going to pay a huge amount of money to come to the UK if they know that their claim is going to be processed in 2 or 3 months, and if they are not valid asylum seekers, they'll be removed from the country. What they now know now is, with these massive backlogs in the system where it's taking years to process, that just by getting to the UK, you're guaranteed to be able to stay here for a considerable amount of time.
The Home Secretary is going to be addressing the House of Commons at around 5 o'clock this afternoon. She's going to talk about her previous resignation and the situation at the Manston Migrant Centre. Now, we'll bring that question to you live here on GB News. Now, 3 people have been arrested on suspicion of people smuggling offences as they attempted to bring a group of migrants to the UK. 2 of the men arrested are from Basingstoke. The third is from Buckinghamshire. A joint operation between the National Crime Agency and the Belgian Federal Police stopped an inflatable boat off the coast of Belgium. 12 migrants believed to be Albanian nationals were also detained. Rishi Sunak's decision to not attend the UN's climate summit in Egypt next week is being kept under review. Well, that's according to the Prime Minister's spokesperson. They say his attendance depends on progress made on preparation for the autumn budget. We're expecting that on the 17th of November. Last week, his office said he was not expected to travel to the event as he's focusing on pressing domestic issues. All poultry and captive birds will have to be kept indoors to try to stop the spread of bird flu following a decision by the Chief Veterinary Officer. The measure also forces bird keepers to follow strict biosecurity measures to help protect their flocks against the disease. The Department for Environment, Food and Rural Affairs says this year the UK has faced its largest ever outbreak of avian influenza. In international news, and parts of Ukraine are without power and water supplies after Russia targeted crucial energy facilities overnight. In the capital, a number of missiles damaged a hydroelectric power plant in Kyiv, leaving 350,000 homes in a blackout. Several other cities have also come under attack. In recent weeks, Russia's increased missile attacks on Ukraine after blaming Kyiv for an explosion that damaged a bridge linking Russia with annexed Crimea. At least 2 people have been arrested as climate activists targeted several major buildings in London this morning. Just Stop Oil activists sprayed orange paint from fire extinguishers on several buildings, including the Home Office, the MI5 building and the Bank of England. Well, they're demanding the government halts all new oil and gas licences. Firefighters have begun voting on whether to accept a 5% pay offer. The Fire Brigade's union's recommending its members reject the offer, claiming it represents a significant real terms pay cut against rising inflation. Online and postal ballots are being sent out today, and voting closes in 2 weeks' time. You're up to date on GB News. I'll bring you more as it happens. Now, back to Patrick.
All right then, people, let's get this week off to a flyer. You're going to have to keep your eyes peeled because we're expecting Home Secretary Suella Braverman to be speaking live in the House of Commons during this very show. I will be bringing that to you as and when we get it, so don't you dare move. As you all know, there's a lot to get stuck into when it comes to Braverman. Firstly, she's admitted now that she breached the ministerial code on 6 separate occasions by sending documents from her government's email to her personal email address. I'm just asking the pretty straightforward question, do you care? gbviews@gbnews.uk. I suspect many of you don't. Why? Well, because there may well be more important things going on. For example, more than 1,000 migrants arrived across the Channel in a single day this weekend. A migrant processing centre in Dover was petrol bombed. There's talk of giant tent cities coming to a park near you, private housing stock, social housing stock, entire hotels being commandeered, individual rooms being commandeered. So you book a place at your local travel lodge or somewhere like that, you open the door and all of a sudden there's a family from Albania next door to you. The public are fast approaching boiling point, if you ask me. There are homeless military veterans. There's female homelessness on the rise. Where's the room for homeless single mums? The elderly struggling to heat homes, 6.2 million big ones a day on hotels alone, is costing us for the Channel migrant situation. We're running out of room. We are running out of room. And mark my words, we are hurtling towards a situation where we as a nation are going to have to ask ourselves, does charity have to start at home? We're going to be asking that throughout the show. gbviews@gbnews.uk, speaking to a whole raft of people on that very issue. But first, you want to focus in on the latest political goings-on. As I've told you, we're expecting Suella Braverman live right here on GB News throughout the course of this show. I'll bring that to you. And our political editor, Darren McCaffrey, is in Westminster right now. So Suella's in hot water.
Yes, she is indeed, for 2 reasons, it must be said. We are expecting to hear from her in the Commons. We reckon at just a little after 5 p.m. This afternoon. First of all, on the more immediate issue, at least in the last couple of hours, about her use of private emails when it came to confidential information, breaking the ministerial code. We know she had to resign, didn't she, less than 2 weeks ago as Home Secretary, having admitted she made mistakes in forwarding those work emails onto her private Gmail account and then on to, frankly, other people that should not have been CC'd into them. It led to her resignation. What we've learned today is that she had forwarded on emails not just once but 6 times. And also, in addition to that, that the timeline of events on the day that she resigned, she had suggested as soon as she'd realised she'd made a mistake, she immediately informed civil servants and the Prime Minister of that. However, it seems that that's not quite the case. It took many hours indeed for her to inform the Chief Whip of what had gone on, even though by that stage they and the Prime Minister already knew. Now, the Home Secretary's defence in all of this is that it was practically just a sensible thing to do to send those emails to a Gmail account because she needed access to 2 phones. And second of all, there was no actual sensitive information involved in all of this, so everyone needs to calm down. That's her argument, though opposition and indeed many Tory MPs, Patrick, are not frankly happy about that. They feel she has broken the ministerial code. She's not necessarily been terribly straightforward, and yes, there is pressure yet again on her job. The other issue, though, is what you've been talking about, probably a more pertinent issue to actual viewers at home, which is what's happening with these processing centres in Kent. We know the numbers in Maidstone are simply unsustainable, meant to hold around 1,500 people for no more than 48 hours in terms of their process time. Yet this weekend we've seen numbers reach 4,000 and people not just there for days, but indeed in some circumstances for weeks. Now it seems that Suella Braverman, as Home Secretary, did not try and create some extra capacity in the hotel sector in order to allow some of these people to move on from those processing centres, and may well have added to the scenes that we've seen this weekend and indeed over the last couple of weeks, where conditions there are said to be wretched and pretty impossible. I think ultimately there's loads of questions about what to do in terms of trying to deal with this asylum issue, and particularly the crisis involving small boats in the English Channel. There is no easy bullet, no easy answer to all this. The government have clearly found that out over the last couple of years, haven't they? One of the things, though, that the Labour Party, indeed others, are saying, one of the ways, the easier ways to try and help this, move this along a little bit better, is to actually speed up processing times, Patrick, when it comes to asylum applications. In theory, they're meant to happen within 6 months. The French have spent a hell of a lot of money on civil servants trying to speed up that process. They brought it down to 3 to 4 months. Here you've got applications that take up to 480 days.
Yeah, Darren McCaffrey, thank you very much, our political editor there in Westminster. I suppose one of the questions off the back of that, thank you, Darren, one of the questions off the back of that is it's all very well and good processing these people. Let's say we came up with a ruthlessly efficient processing system. We still have to put them somewhere, because the fact is that the vast majority of these people haven't got anywhere to live at the minute. Hotel stock appears to be full. We've also got now private rental facilities, so not just social housing. That appears to be dwindling as well. There's talk, isn't there, of tent cities coming to a park near you. I mean, it's all very well and good processing them faster, but where do we put them? But now, onto that very issue, which is about these migrant detention centres. Very disturbing story, of course, emerged over the weekend about a petrol bomb, or 3 of them apparently, being used at one of those sites. Lots of you getting in touch about this, because I've been asking you to get in touch. Stephen's been on. He says, I do care that Suella breached security, but I care more about the boats breaching security. And Stephen, I suspect that is a very common view. GBViews at gbnews.uk. It's time now on that issue to go to Mark White, who is our Home and Security editor, because the Home Secretary will face MPs in the House of Commons this afternoon. She's going to have to explain the decisions made about what's being called a car crash when it comes to dealing with these migrants at the holding centre. Overcrowding fears, but frankly, much wider fears as well. Mark White, our Home and Security editor, joins me right now. What's the latest there where you are, Mark?
Well, certainly it is a growing crisis as far as these processing centres is concerned. Highlighted, of course, yesterday with this firebombing attack that took place at the Dover processing centre. Kent Police haven't said an awful lot about their ongoing investigation, except to confirm that their main suspect died a short time later. He's believed to have taken his own life. A Reuters photographer witnessed the attack and then the subsequent suicide, he said, of that suspect at a petrol station just a few hundred metres away from where we are here. The motive, at this stage, we don't have one, or at least one publicly revealed by the police. All they are saying is that they're keeping an open mind. They have not named the suspect who died either, Patrick. And as I say, all of this comes against the backdrop, as you've been highlighting there, of very serious concerns about the numbers who are coming across the English Channel with no end in sight to that. Just short of 1,500 people came across over the weekend. That takes the total who've come so far this year, Patrick, to just under 40,000, just 100 or so short of 40,000. Now compare that to the 28,500 who came in the whole of last year, and you you can see that number is well in excess of that, and we've still got 2 months to run, two of historically the busier months, because counterintuitively perhaps, given the weather in the channel, you would think that they were quieter months, but last year they were very, very busy in November and December. Anytime there was a lull in the weather, you were getting dozens of boats coming across the channel, and we expect exactly the same this year.
Yes, indeed. Mark, look, thank you very, very much. Mark White there is our Home and Security Editor. I'll be speaking to you again shortly as he brings us updates from that situation that's taken place at the Marston Processing Centre, which was firebombed over the weekend by an individual who, as we understand it, and as we understood it anyway, proceeded to take his own life. It's important to say when we have these conversations now that clearly the individual who's done that was wrong. I mean, it goes without saying. It's a terrible, terrible act that's taken place there. I mean, it's shocking stuff, and we cannot have that in this country. But I'm keen not to allow this migrant issue to be hijacked by the acts of someone who you imagine is clearly not particularly mentally stable. This is a massive discussion that can't be avoided, really, now by acts like this. We have to be able to continue to discuss in a nice and normal and decent way what's been going on, the numbers of people coming over, 1,500 over the weekend, and crucially, where do we put them? Reports, and I completely believe these reports, of mass overcrowding and terrible conditions at detention centres. I mean, that speaks for itself. Just look at the numbers alone. But then it becomes about where do we put them? We've got hotels who've been commandeered. We're now looking at individual hotel rooms apparently being used. So, yeah, when you go to a Holiday Inn, who knows who your neighbours might be. We're looking at social housing stock being used up, private rental stock being used up. Are we going to see tent cities in parks? And then there's the backdrop to all of this, isn't there? How much money is that costing us every single day? But we already have people here who are in desperate need, aren't we? So we're seeing now that apparently the Royal British Legion, for example, suggesting that between 3 and 6% of the UK's homeless population are former armed forces members, homeless military veterans. We're seeing a sharp rise in the number of female homeless, for example, vulnerable young women, in some cases probably girls, on the streets of Britain. Joining me now to ask what's a big question that we're going to ask throughout the course of this show, gbviews@gbnews.uk, is whether or not you think that charity needs to now start at home. And joining me is Big Phil Campion, former SAS trooper. Big Phil, thank you very much. You are, of course, a veteran. How do you think veterans are looking at what's going on now, homeless veterans looking at what's going on now, seeing people getting, bed and board, as it were, at the taxpayers' expense when they might be finding it difficult to access housing stock?
It's not a pretty picture for anybody who's in that position. And trust me, I do come across people in that position and do a lot of stuff around the various charities that try and help them. And when I deal with these various charities that try and help them, the main issue they have is there doesn't seem to be a pot of money that they can dip into, or somebody with an official posture who can actually help them too much. And so when they look outside of that and see that, all these other people who've got no right to be here whatsoever, really, are getting help and are getting hotel rooms and are getting this and are getting that and are getting the other, it's going to cause resentment, isn't it? It's not a great position for them to be in.
Look, Phil, I've been talking for quite a while about the idea that I think we're going to be backed into a corner in this country where we have to have the kind of uncomfortable conversation that, frankly, we're having right now, which is very, very black and white terms. Does charity start at home? And the reason why I think we've got there is 1,500 people came across the channel at the weekend. Roughly speaking, around 40,000 that we know of have arrived already this year. Clearly, we're out of room at detention centres. Clearly, we're out of room at hotels. Clearly, we're out of room at social housing stock. People say, well, look, we've got loads of space in this country. Where is it? I can't see any because we're having to maybe talk about tent cities. And at the same time now, Phil, we've got people, like people who've served for Queen and country, who, frankly, cannot get a roof over their heads. Do you think our priorities are wrong?
I think our priorities are totally wrong, yeah. And I do honestly believe that anybody who has served their country, anybody who has paid their taxes here, anybody who has a right to be here from birthright, etc., 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 should be placed in a queue in front of anybody who doesn't. Now, that's not to say that we can't help people out, because I do genuinely believe that some of the people coming across do need help. But you have to put your own people first. And if you're in a position where you can't, then you have to, you've got to seriously look at yourself and ask those questions that you're asking me now, And we can talk about this, and I know what's right, and I think a lot of the majority of the people out there know what's right. But, you know, this is a problem that's been building up for ages. You know, I highlighted this well before COVID. I went over there in a small boat myself, brought it back, and I was mocked by Channel 4. I was mocked for doing this, okay? Yeah. But now they can't get the story out the door quick enough as their biggest deal, you know?
Yeah, exactly. And for ages, people have been saying, well, hang on a minute, I think Britain might be full. And that's been deemed to go, well, actually, what you just don't want is any more migrants, legal or illegal. But that's not the conversation we're having now. We are now finally in a situation where we can legitimately have a conversation about whether or not Britain, when it comes to channel migrants, is full, because we're talking about the fact that we haven't got any room for them. And the charities have shifted. They've gone from saying, well, they're all asylum seekers and refugees. Figures come out about the fact that now loads of them are from Albania and getting involved in the criminal underworld. And then on top of that now, they go, well, OK, well, what we need to do is process them quicker. All right, so we process them quicker. Where do we put them? I mean, I find it a little bit bonkers, Phil, to be honest with you, when it comes to this kind of stuff. And do you think that the vast majority of the British public are now starting to look around and think, well, I would rather look after our homeless military veterans than I would some people that maybe I don't know who they are or where they're from?
I absolutely, 100%. I believe that. I believe that most of the people who come from where I come from would put a veteran in front of anybody. Try, you know, perhaps maybe, you know, women and children, but certainly when it comes to this, a veteran, someone who's served this country, someone who's been the extra mile, somebody who's served in some extremely horrible, disgusting places to make our lives better, to ensure that we sleep well at night, should always go in the front of the queue before someone who hasn't done that for this country. Do you know what I mean? It's a no-brainer, an absolute no-brainer. And don't forget, we do keep finding solutions to this problem. You know, there was the Rwanda thing. You know, we could have sort of like, even if people didn't like it, we could go, all right, we'll roll with that until we can find a solution. But we didn't. We kiboshed it. Went, no. And all these lunatics jumped up on their horses and went, no, you can't do that. And they stopped it. Very quickly, and very finally, Phil, I'm deeply concerned about a similar incident like the one that we saw over the weekend, a terrible incident, a completely out-of-control, ludicrous, horrific incident of someone lobbing petrol bombs at a migrant detention centre. I am concerned that unless more is done to tackle this problem, we are going to end up seeing more people either, quote, taking matters into their own hands or doing stupid, horrific things because our government hasn't got a grip of it. Unfortunately, Patrick, I think you might be right. I would seriously not condone any behaviour like that myself, you know what I mean? But, you know, the facts are people are angry, people are upset, and people are desperate. And then when people are desperate, they do desperate things, and it can lead to that sort of behaviour. And I don't condone that whatsoever, and I wouldn't like to see it happen. But don't be surprised when it does.
Big Phil, thank you very much. Big Phil Campion there, former SAS Trooper, talking about a conversation that we're going to be having throughout the course of this show in relation to the numbers of people coming over across the channel at the moment and overcrowding at detention centres. Should charity start at home? Do you think that now we are reaching capacity? GB Views at gbnews.uk. This is indeed GB News Live with me, Patrick Christys. Coming up, when will it end? Just Stop Oil protesters target 4 buildings, including the Home Office. Well, there's probably no one in there, but anyway, it's part of a month of daily protests which have taken up valuable police time. Shocking amounts of police resources being diverted to deal with this lot of numpties. Is that right? I'll be putting that to a spokesperson for the group next after this short break.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here. You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m, where I'll be joined by 2 of the country's top comedians as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight. If it's a big story, we'll be covering it, I guarantee, but we'll also have some fun along the way. That's GB News headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other pay-per-review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and TuneIn apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
Join me, Arlene Foster, for the briefing on GB News. Every Friday at 3 p.m, I'll give you all the latest political news and analysis, and we'll have robust live debate. To make sure that you're caught up on all of the biggest issues of the day, we'll bring on experts in their field. I'll ask the questions that you'd like to ask. We're not afraid to tackle discussions from all perspectives, including yours. Don't forget, the briefing with me, Arlene Foster, every Friday at 3 p.m. on GB News.
Hello, I'm Alastair Stewart, and I'd invite you to join me at noon on Saturdays and Sundays for Alastair Stewart and Friends. I've been in this business for over 40 years. Now, here at GB News, I've never been happier. I get to choose the big stories that really interest me. We hear what you have to say, and you hear what I have to say. I really hope you can join me, noon on Saturdays and Sundays.
Right, welcome back, everybody. Patrick Christys here on GB News Live. Now, Just Stop Oil activists have been arrested after the group hit 4 targets today on their final day of month-long protests. Earlier this morning, 6 of the activists spray-painted orange paint across the Home Office, the MI5 building, the Bank of England and the News UK headquarters at London Bridge. They say the buildings were targeted because they represent the pillars that support and maintain the power of fossil fuel in the economy. Well, joining me now in the studio is Dr. Patrick Hart, who's a spokesperson for Just Stop Oil. He's an activist and a GP as well. Right, thank you very much. So a lot of people will be thinking, is this the end of the monthly protest? Can we just not hear from you for a while now?
Absolutely not, no. Right. So, yeah, you're correct, this is the end of the monthly protest, but as we've been saying again and again, we are demanding an end to all new fossil fuel projects, and we now know that the public support us, that the UN support us, that anyone with any sense supports us.
Does the public support you?
Absolutely, yeah. So
what basis have you got for that?
So there was a recent poll done which showed that 66% of the UK public support direct action, such as what we do, on the cause of the...
But direct action could be just doing things like we'd agreed at COP26, actual action when it comes to limiting things like fossil fuel use or banning fracking or things like that.
I think you're misunderstanding what direct action means. That means direct action as in activism, as in civil resistance against the government. This is the question that was asked, and people are in support of it.
Do they support this exact stuff? Because there's a lot of very, very angry people shouting at you on the streets, and certainly most people who I talk to think, frankly, it's a waste of time and you should all go home.
So, again, I think you're inaccurate in what you're saying. Every time we do an action, we see that people are out on this. A few people are out showing that they don't agree with what we're doing. But actually, a huge number of people do come up to us and say, "Well done for what you're doing."
You're a GP.
Emails. We have emails coming in saying, "Thank you for what you're doing," all the time.
I get all of that. I mean, I get emails like this one right now in front of me from Philip saying that you should be sent to jail. A lot of arrests there. You are a GP.
Yeah, I am.
Yeah, and last time I had a Just Stop Oil person here, they had to justify the fact that they were stopping an ambulance from taking the quickest route to a hospital. How does that make you feel?
So I'm absolutely sick of hearing this. So we've now had a statement from the ambulance service saying that no ambulance has been delayed.
But we saw it on video.
So actually, we didn't see a blue light ambulance.
We did see a blue light ambulance, and I played it. That clip, you're the spokesperson.
Why are ambulance services saying that we're not delaying them? I've been on so many of these protests now, so many of these actions, and every time I see blue lights being let straight through, I'm there on the streets with doctors, with nurses, with paramedics who are out there with me doing this in civil resistance against our government, who are on a murderous rampage of new fossil fuel projects. It's ridiculous that you're spreading this absolute nonsense.
No,
we're doing this to protect.
I'm not spreading the absolute nonsense. No.
So my job is to look after people and protect life.
Right.
And I'm absolutely clear on that. Everything we do.
But there are reported cases of people. There's a lady in Kent, for example, who did die in the back of an ambulance while she was held up.
So I don't know.
That happened.
I don't know where you get these reports from. I don't know where you're hearing this stuff from. So all I've ever seen, I've got. I'll show you my phone if you want. I've got a load of videos of ambulances being waved through.
I do understand that.
The paramedics actually thanking us as they go past.
Look, I do understand.
Whilst I'm stood there with other paramedics.
It is
so
absolutely.
Why are you spreading this nonsense?
No, I'm not spreading this nonsense. It is absolutely fair to say that there are loads of occasions, probably the overwhelming majority of occasions where an ambulance or a police or the fire trucks with the blues and twos on get let through by you guys. That's undeniable, and I want to make that clear. But at the same time, we had, the last time I had a Just Stop Oil spokesperson on here, it was because he was on the day before that, and he said to me, we've got this blue light policy, we'll always get out of the way. I played him footage of the fact that they didn't, and he couldn't justify it. The thing that I would like to just move this conversation on slightly is the wasting of police time or the use of police time. No, hear me out on this question first. So the police have come out and said that something like 7,500 extra police hours had to be dictated to you guys. We've got a knife crime epidemic, we've got a gun crime epidemic, a drug dealing epidemic, we've got people's houses being broken into. Is this really the best use of police's time? Because again, as a GP, if you've got a young lad who's been stabbed on the street, now the police are ungluing you as opposed to sticking his wound back together.
Well, I'm going to address that, but I'm also not ready to move on. I've got something else to say. So on that front, all the government has to do is agree to no new fossil fuel projects, and these protests will end.
It's a big ask.
They will end. No, it's not a big ask. It's what the UN is saying. It's what the International Energy is saying. It's what normal people are saying, to save money on bills, to give ourselves a right to a future. That's what we need to do. On the subject of health and harm to people, I've worked in parts of the world where people are dying right now, and you're worried about these stories that you've come up with about
I've not come up with them. They're there. What do you think I do? Sit around on my own and make these things up?
People are dying every day right now, and I've seen these people die, and you don't seem to be interested in that.
I am interested in it.
I don't know how you can justify that.
Well, no, I am interested in it. I'm interested in every single life. I'm also interested in who pays you.
Who pays me? Well, the NHS pay me to work.
Do you receive any money from Just Stop Oil?
No, absolutely not. I'm going to work every day, working for the NHS and doing this completely in my own time,
reason why I ask,
on my own money.
I get that, and that's very commendable of you because you back your cause, and that's great. The reason why I ask is over the weekend a story broke which did say that basically Just Stop Oil can pay for things like accommodation and maybe even a wage per protest. Do you have any idea where that money's coming from?
So one thing we hear is that we're all entitled middle-class people who...
No, I'm just wondering where that money comes from.
As soon as we say, well, if you want to do this essential work to try and prevent death right now and in the future, then you don't have to be out of pocket. You can
who pays for
have some travel expenses. Donations, all sorts of people. From me, sometimes. I donate my own money.
Is all of the donations made completely public? Because that's a massive issue that you guys seem to have with some of the groups.
So, it's outrageous. So we hear all the time how the Tufton Street think tanks are completely shadowy and unwilling to say where their huge donations come
so
from.
Are you.
Clearly from the fossil fuel industry. We have small donations from just normal people, and now you're casting doubt.
No, I'm just asking if you know.
We do this on a shoestring. It's outrageous that you think that...
But realistically, those donations could come from anyone, anywhere.
Well, yeah, I mean, I'd encourage your viewers to donate. Please do. I'd also encourage them to join us. Go to our website and join us. Get out on the streets and make this happen.
All right, thank you very much. I did enjoy our little back and forth there. And fair play to you for fighting the good fight, even if it does inconvenience people or whatever. There we go. Right, that was Patrick Hart, a spokesperson for Just Stop Oil, an activist, and, of course, a GP as well. GBviews at gbnews.uk. Oh, relevantly, actually. A strike by nurses would be, quote, criminal and put lives at risk. That's the claim of a Tory Police and Crime Commissioner ahead of an NHS strike. Bella, do you back nurses' strikes? I'll be speaking to a London nurse on what she thinks. But first, it's your latest headlines.
It's 3:34. A very good afternoon. I'm Rosie Wright, keeping you up to date. The Prime Minister says he has full confidence in the Home Secretary after she admitted to breaching the ministerial code on 6 separate occasions. Suella Braverman says she sent government documents to her personal email address on several occasions between September the 6th and October the 16th. Now, writing to the Commons Home Affairs Select Committee, she said she'd apologised to Rishi Sunak when she was reappointed as Home Secretary. Well, meanwhile, Suella Braverman's under increasing pressure over the backlog of migrants arriving in the UK and the conditions of their processing centres. It's understood hundreds of migrants were moved to an already overcrowded facility in Kent over the weekend. An immigration watchdog said they were left speechless by safety problems at the site in Manston. Well, Suella Braverman will be addressing the House of Commons this afternoon, shortly after 5 o'clock. She's going to address her previous resignation and the situation at the Manston Migrant Centre. So we'll bring that to you here live on GB News. Now, 3 people have been arrested on suspicion of people smuggling offences as they attempted to bring a group of migrants to the UK. 2 of the men are from Basingstoke. The third is from Buckinghamshire. A joint operation between the National Crime Agency and the Belgian Federal Police stopped the inflatable boat off the coast of Belgium. 12 migrants who are believed to be Albanian nationals were also detained. All birds must soon be kept indoors across England to try to stop the spread of avian influenza. The Department for Environment, Food and Rural Affairs say from Monday the 7th of November, it will be a legal requirement to house flocks. This year, the UK has faced its largest ever outbreak of bird flu, with the disease detected at more than 70 premises this month alone. We're on your TV, online and DAB+ radio. This is GB News. Here's a quick snapshot of today's markets. The pound will buy you $1.1502 and €1.1629. The price of gold is £1,424 and 39 pence per ounce, and the FTSE 100 is at 7,126 points.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club. Oh, my goodness me. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. Over a drink, we have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
We are GB News.
And we'd like to say thank you
to each and every one of you
for helping our great nation
find its voice.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Across England, Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland.
On TV,
on radio
and online.
We're proud to be
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
On the Mark Steyn Show, we cover the stories a lot of people are scared even to mention. The stuff that really matters with some of the world's biggest thinkers.
Now is his opportunity to kind of take the steering wheel of history.
Break away from the flock at 8 o'clock on GB News with the Mark Steyn Show.
Every Saturday at 2 o'clock, join me, Darren Grimes, for Real Britain. I'm not afraid to give you a platform and say it how it is.
Come on, make the case.
Something like this is very, very important to people.
And we're always up for a laugh on this show.
God, honestly, you'd think there were no problems in the world.
Real Britain, every Saturday on GB News.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debate, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
Welcome back, everybody, to GB News Live. What do you make of that little dust-up with Just Stop Oil, eh? GB Views at gbnews.uk. Well, the Conservative Police and Crime Commissioner for Cleveland, Steve Turner, has said that NHS strikes, nurses' strikes, really, would be, quote, criminal and put lives at risk. He said that the strikes would heap pressure on already stretched A&E crews as hundreds of thousands vote on industrial action. Unison, the largest union, is recommending its members vote to strike, as is the Royal College of Nursing, which is also balloting members. Those ballots are going to be coming to an end in the next couple of days, so we thought we'd preview it a bit, really, because let's be honest with you, it does look a lot like they're going to ballot to strike. So we can now speak to nurse and writer Sarah Jane Palmer, who joins me in the studio. Sarah, thank you very much. Great to have you back on the show again. I'm always really keen with these things, not to just talk to union representatives or politicians, but talk to someone who's been at the coalface of it. Let's deal with the first things first. If nurses strike, do you think that it would be, quote, criminal and putting lives at risk?
Well, I think, it could be. If there's... The NMC stipulates a code of conduct for all nurses that they must abide by. So if nurses are on strike, that code still applies. So there's various things that have been set out by the NMC that stipulate various situations like emergencies and patients being at risk where nurses must respond. And if they don't, then that could amount to negligence. And I'm not sure if that could amount to criminal negligence. I think his comments are quite...
I think he's obviously passionate, isn't he? And I think a lot of people are, because a lot of people, I get it every single day here in my inbox about people saying, I can't get a GP's appointment, or the quality of care, or it took ages for the ambulance to turn up. And I get that nurses do an incredibly difficult job. I've never saved a life. It would be terrifying if you're in a life and death situation and I rocked up. It's game over, OK? But at the same time, 2 pay rises in as many years. The reason for them striking is predominantly about pay. Are nurses paid enough?
Yeah, this is the thing. They've had the 15% rise, and then what they're asking for now, I think, is fairly unreasonable, to be honest, because they're asking for 15%, which is above inflation. And in this economic crisis, I think it's unreasonable. It means that a strike is inevitable, but the strike isn't proportionate. So I feel that to carry out strike action is unnecessary, and it could amount to a negligent type of behaviour towards patients. Because a US study actually did find that strike action caused a 19% increase in mortality.
So there you go. So, right, so, OK, so we've got some facts there. So 19%, this is a US study, a 19% increase in mortality. What I'm going to do there is just hold you there, if that's all right, for a second, because I'm just getting it in my ear now that we can actually speak to Labour's Northumbria Police and Crime Commissioner Kim McGuinness. And Kim was... Thank you very much, Kim. Great to have you on the show. Now, you were on the panel when the comments were made, the comments I referred to earlier, which were that a nurses' strike or an NHS strike would lead to... Well, it would be criminal and cause deaths, OK? So what's your reaction to them? Because from what we're hearing here anyway, you know, a 19% increase in mortality, all right, that was a US study, but nurses have had a couple of pay rises in a couple of years. Everyone's a bit skint at the minute, and people don't want their elderly relatives to go into hospital and die, which presumably would happen if nurses disappear. Your views?
Well, I think the comments about it being criminal were quite sensationalist. They were designed to get a headline, which has obviously been a success. He's got a headline. But the fact is that this is about blaming people who are on the front line providing these crucial services for the fact that they're simply not being paid enough to often feed themselves or put the heating on. And a lot of this strike, you know, it's being talked about that this is purely about pay. It's not. The nurses, the NHS staff are there drawing attention to the fact that they're not able to provide adequate services because low pay and overworked and bad conditions are leading to more of them leaving the service, and the lack of funding means that they're not feeling like they can give the best type of care to their patients that they want to. So it's about so much more than just pay.
I understand that. Do you know roughly what a nurse's salary is?
Well, I know that the starting salary for a nurse is somewhere in the low 20s, which is really not an awful lot, given the current circumstances with inflation running at above 10%. And so some of these people, and we're talking about nurses, but we're also talking about hospital porters and so on, are among the lowest paid. And so when we're talking about these people going on strike, and we haven't had a ballot for strike in this country from nurses and NHS staff for over 100 years.
Well, yeah, but some would argue that the reason why they haven't had a ballot for strike in that amount of time is actually because they've had 2 pay rises in 2 years, including one as recently as July this year of, as far as I'm seeing anyway, it's about a 4% rise. Now, no one could have predicted inflation going up to this particular cost. In fact, the very point is, if we had predicted inflation in the economic situation, we wouldn't have hurtled headlong into it. So, unfortunately, people suffer, don't they, when inflation rises? I'm sorry, it sounds insensitive, but why should nurses be any different? Their union should have negotiated better in the first place.
Well, their new unions are negotiating, and that's what this process is about. And actually, you know, they haven't been balloted for strike for over 100 years because care professionals do this with the absolute utmost of consideration. This is the last thing that they want to do. Nobody wants them to have to do this. And so for me, the government need to get back around the table and think about this. And I don't think that it's right to make the argument that nurses are any different. There are a number of sectors who feel that they're having to take this strike action, because whilst everyone suffers when inflation goes up, we are talking about some of our lowest paid workers who've gone from the front line to the bread line, who are using food banks. These are our professional people who are there.
I understand that, and I think you're alluding to things like rail workers, teachers, etc. And I do understand that, but at the same time, in the private sector, people are getting pay rises in line with inflation, and it is those people in the private sector who are going to have to pay for the pay rise to people in the public sector. Kim, can you stay where you are for me?
Well, it's all of us. It's all of us who pay for pay rises for the public sector. And
well, yeah, but the public sector is the ones getting the pay rise. Kim, stay there. Kim, stay there. I will come back to you, Kim. I will come back to you, Kim. I do appreciate this. I'm just going to go back now to Sarah Jane Palmer, who is, it would appear anyway, our resident nurse here at GB News. Do you want to come back to anything that was said there?
Yeah, I've got a few references here. The British Medical Journal opened a study that showed that pay alone cannot ameliorate the workforce issues in nursing.
OK.
And that was done this year. So that means that really, by offering a pay rise, it's not necessarily going to make a difference to those conditions, that the other... I don't know.
Yeah, Kim, yes, Kim.
that Kim was referring to. So therefore I feel that it's unnecessary to strike based on pay when the conditions need to be sorted out first.
Well, Kim would say they're striking over conditions as well. One of my understandings of this, you would know better than I do, is that, frankly, there aren't enough nurses. Now, one of the things that I say a lot, which I take a bit of flack for online, it must be said, is do you not know what job you're signing up to and the hours that job entails and the conditions that job entails when you become a nurse?
Exactly. You make a very good point here, because the fact is, when you go into nursing, you know exactly that you're going to have to work very hard, and physically and mentally it will be challenging, but you do it because of the basis of your morals and the passion that you have to actually care for others. The value you get from nursing isn't really through the pay. Pay needs to be fair, but I think there are other conditions as well that...
OK.
And they can... And staff retention also, just to make a point, the staff retention issues also won't be resolved by pay. There's so many cultural issues, and that was identified in another study earlier this year by the British Medical Journal.
OK, all right, thank you very much. We've got a bit of a chock-a-block section here because Kim's still on the line, but as I understand it, we've just received word from Rob Williams, who's Socialist Party National Workplace Trade Union organiser. Rob, thank you very, very much for coming on the show. I'm not sure if you quite heard what Sarah Jane was saying there, but I'll just put this to you now. If nurses go on strike, quotes, it's criminal and people will die.
Well, the obvious thing to say, it's criminal what's happening to NHS workers, including nurses. And by the way, these are the last people who want to take strike action. The Royal College of Nursing, this would be the first strike they've ever taken in England, Wales or Scotland. So that's the
pay rises in 2 years as well. And people find that difficult to get their heads around, because they go, yes, it's one thing thinking, all right, nurses should be paid a bit more. Maybe their union, dare I say it, maybe their union should have negotiated a bit harder. Or maybe they should just wait until we're out of this financial crisis and ask for a pay rise then.
Exactly.
And the pay rises they've had imposed on them have been well below inflation, well below the cost of living crisis.
But inflation is mental now. That's why, isn't it? Everything's below the cost of inflation.
By the way, that all those health unions have made it absolutely clear that they would comply with emergency cover, give serious notice to try and avoid any issues. But the fact is that those workers are taking action, and the rest of the working class, the rest of workers need to support them. Can I make a point, by the way? This Tory police commissioner, it's 9 years ago that police voted then by 4-1 that they would want industrial action. You've had police in Scotland this summer withdraw goodwill over a pay offer that's been imposed to them. And some police federation officers want to revisit the decision on industrial action. So it's all workers who are under the cosh, in my opinion. All workers should strike together.
Well, yeah, but see, that's the thing. Yeah, but see, that's the thing, isn't it? That is the ultimate point for you, Rob, who is, fair enough, the Socialist Party National Workplace and Trade Union organiser. Realistically, you want all workers to strike and we have some kind of revolution and then your lot come in. That's the main point for you, which is your right. Which is your right, of course.
All workers are under the cosh. All workers are being hammered by the employers in this government.
Okay.
But these health workers, let's make it absolutely clear.
Very quickly, mate, I've got to move on.
What they want to do is to take strike action. They've been forced in it, and we should all support them.
All right. All right, thank you, Rob. Rob Williams, our Socialist Party National Workplace and Trade Union Organiser. Gosh, that's a long business card. Right, I'm going back to Kim now. Kim, thank you very much. I believe you're still there. Yes, OK,
Yeah.
Great stuff. Thank you very much for hanging around. Kim McGuinness there, of course. The final word to you, Labour's Northumbria Police and Crime Commissioner. I mean, do nurses not know what they're getting to? Can they not wait a little bit and then do it later on? Because in line with inflation now, and inflation is the highest it's been for absolutely ages, it's a bit much, because it's going to have to stay at that level, isn't it?
For how long do you wait? This is the thing. And they're victims of the financial crisis. That's kind of the whole point of this, is that some of these people are the lowest paid. They are victims of this crisis. They are using food banks. They are making the decision at the end of that long, hard shift that they knew that they were going to have to do to go home and not put the heating on. And all the while, you know, this isn't just about pay. It's about drawing attention to the fact that conditions are not good. People are leaving the workforce. I really admire Sarah Jane and others who have the commitment to their patients and want to do this really, really difficult work. But they have to be allowed to be able to live and to be able to provide the right level of care to their patients. And
I think
simply,
it's a sticky wicket,
they don't
Kim.
feel like they can do either of those
I
things.
get that.
And that is why we're losing nurses. It's
I get
not
that.
because they just don't work hard enough, or
I
just
think you're on a
don't
sticky
think that
wicket
it's important
because I hate to say it, but let's say they vote for strike action and in a couple of months' time or whenever it is, I've got you back on here and people have been dying, OK? I'm going to have to ask you that question. You know, if that was your mum or your dad or someone close to you, a loved one, for example, would you be happy for that, given the strike action? But hopefully we never have to have that conversation. Kim, we're out of time, but thank you very, very much. Kim McGuinness there, Police and Crime Commissioner for Labour. Final word now to Sarah Jane, who is our resident nurse at GB News. You are, of course, a nurse. Just very, very quickly, can you just talk to other nurses and give them your opinions on whether or not you think they should vote for strike action? Because that ballot closes in a couple of days.
Well, I would say that you need to remember what you went into nursing for and what the risks are. And you need to remember that also studies show that mortality rises at weekends when there are less staff on, when there are less senior nurses on, mortality rises. And of course, strike action has been shown to increase mortality by nearly 20%. So I think you need to remember that when you sign up to strike, then that carries a huge risk for patients.
Sarah Jane, thank you very much. Sarah Jane Palmer there, a nurse and indeed an author as well. Right, gosh, what do you make of that? An unbelievable amount for you to get your teeth stuck into there. GBviews at gbnews.uk. Get them coming in the inbox. We're going to be discussing this throughout the show. We're also going to be discussing, of course, whether or not charity starts at home in light of the fact that, frankly, we're massively overcrowded when it comes to what's going on in the Channel. Hotels being used, spare hotel rooms being used. Talk of parks, tent cities in parks near you. What do you make of all of that? Private rental stock, social housing stock. Actually, is Britain full? gbviews at gbnews.uk. But something a little bit different to finish this hour, OK? As you can see, it's Halloween today. I say as you can see. There you are. Yes, I've been made to sit next to a festering GB News pumpkin for the entirety of this show. There we are. No jokes, please, about my fake tan. Well, a South London railway station annual Halloween charity display could be under threat after one customer, just one customer, complained that it was un-Christian. So railway booking office worker Denise James has raised more than, get this, £400,000 in charity for South Eastern. But after the complaint, she's announced that she'll be stepping down from further decorating efforts. Let's speak now to Tim Dieppe, who is a spokesperson for Christian Concern. Thank you very much. Where do you stand on Pumpkin Railway Gate?
Well, I think, I'm not a big fan of Halloween generally, Patrick. I think that, it celebrates evil and sort of make light of evil and that kind of thing. And I haven't seen this display, but what I've read about it is that it says you've got a fake body being run over by a car driven by a skeleton. And that's not the sort of thing I want to sort of look forward to seeing on my way to work when I'm perhaps trying to dodge cars over the road anyway. And this kind of
is it a religious matter or just a matter of taste? Because I mean, I see some horrific things on the tube I wish I didn't have to see on the way into work, but I don't go right in about it.
Sure, well, I'm not sure I would have written into it either. I mean, I've seen how gory it was and just how offensive it was, OK? But I can understand some people taking offence potentially at it. And credit to the woman for raising money through this kind of means. But she's also raised money in other ways. There are various other ways to raise money. And I would suggest, why don't you raise money in other ways than doing something that could be quite gory and a bit offensive and sort of glorifying evil and ugliness and so on. I'd rather do it in a better way than that. And
so is Halloween itself Christian, because my wondering about this is, look, I am a Christian, don't mind saying that at all, and right. I get that it's not a Christian festival at all, and I do understand that, but neither's Diwali, neither's Eid, you know, and I don't mind seeing visual symbols of that being displayed.
Yeah. So I think that Halloween, in the way in which it kind of deliberately sort of, you know, glorifies in evil or portrays it or makes fun of evil or makes it seem like it's a fun thing to be evil or act evil, and particularly trick or treat, where you're sending mass children to strangers to ask them for sweets, and then, you know, which is not something you normally tell children to do, for one thing, and then you're also intimidating and putting fear into vulnerable older people or people living on their own with that kind of thing. That's not helpful, and that's not a good thing to do. And a lot of churches respond to this by organising light parties to sort of, you know, get to children to celebrate Halloween, the time, in a much better way, in a much more wholesome way. And rather than going into gory, horrible things, let's celebrate and have fun in good ways, and in ways that are wholesome, ways that glorify good things. And I think that's
do you think most kids do you think
would take on this kind of thing?
Yeah. Do you think that realistically, though, most kids want to take part in it because it's fun? They're not looking at the fact that it might have its roots in evil, or that they actually think that these are spirits that are raised from the dead, and that actually it's just a nice thing for kids to do, and maybe it's a bit joyless of you to go against it.
Yeah, of course, that's what most kids think. They'll think whatever they're told to think by their parents and so on about it. You know, that's what they'll do. And so they're in a lot of their minds, they're just having a lot of fun. But the kind of fun and glorifying an evil, or glorifying hurting people, or glorifying goriness and that kind of thing, is perhaps not the kind of thing you want your children to enjoy and to celebrate. Let's celebrate other things. Let's celebrate things that are good for people, rather than goriness and evil and you know, to an extent, sort of leading people into occultic kind of activities as well, which is very explicitly anti-Christian when you get down that level.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose, do you think that's actually happening? Do you think that children, little Timmy goes out tonight with a Scream mask on and receives candy from Doreen at number 42, and then he goes and joins an occult cult?
Listen, I wouldn't want my kids to go in a dark night, masked up with a gory, evil portraying thing, you know, begging old people, you need, you know, give me a sweet or else I'll do something nasty to you. You know, that is not the kind of thing I would ever want any child to do. And that's not the kind of position I'd ever put any vulnerable person in their home to have to face up to either. You know, why are we doing that? Why do we think that that's fun? Why do you think that's a good thing to do? Why are we telling children, hey, it's fun to go and intimidate and sort of scare and that kind of thing people? Let's do other things for fun. There are lots of other ways to have fun than doing that.
OK, I've got to go. OK, actually, sorry, Tim, I'm being told I've got to wrap this up. There's something happening. Tim, thank you very much. Tim Dieppe there, who's a spokesperson for Christian Concern. Good luck. I would not want to be a trick-or-treat around yours, it's fair to say, but we'll have to talk about Christian Concern there. Right, OK, so stay with us, ladies and gentlemen, because we've got loads coming up in the next hour. I understand that there is some breaking news in relation to the Dover firebombing. So the man suspected of firebombing the Border Force Immigration Centre in Dover on Sunday has been confirmed as a 66-year-old man from the High Wycombe area in Buckinghamshire, who was found dead at a nearby petrol station, Kent Police have said. I'll just read that one more time. So this is breaking news now in relation to that Dover firebombing at the Migrant Detention Centre that we've been talking about. That was on Sunday. And the identity of that man is he's a 66-year-old from the High Wycombe area in Buckinghamshire. He was found dead at a nearby petrol station. That is according to Kent Police. So there we go. Stay with us, because we're going to have more on that, obviously, as it develops. And, as well, we are going to be going live to Suella Braverman, the Home Secretary. She's going to face MPs in the House of Commons. We will be bringing that to you live. She's got to explain a lot of stuff, OK, because she's got to explain why she broke the ministerial code 6 times. Again, do you care about that? GBViews at gbnews.uk. She's also got to explain what the heck is going on when it comes to the channel, and what's going on when it comes to overcrowding and where we're going to be putting some of these channel migrants. I dare say she's going to be asked a question or two about that breaking news that we've just unearthed here. A 66-year-old man from the High Wycombe area is believed to be the chap who threw firebombs at a migrant detention centre in Dover. He then is believed to have taken his own life shortly after that. The Met Police have also said that the Just Stop Oil protests have cost the police a total of 7,900 shifts so far this month, after their month-long protests, which end today. So we'll be touching on that. It's actually the tip of the iceberg, though, when it comes to the cost of the taxpayer. And half of the £400 energy bill vouchers have gone unclaimed this month. I was talking to my producer about this earlier on. I'm trying to figure out, am I sitting on £400 that I've not claimed? Find out when we come back after this very, very short break. Stay tuned. Patrick Christys on GB News Live.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, mate. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christys, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join me, Arlene Foster, for the briefing on GB News. Every Friday at 3 p.m, I'll give you all the latest political news and analysis, and we'll have robust live debate. To make sure that you're caught up on all of the biggest issues of the day, we'll bring on experts in their field. I'll ask the questions that you'd like to ask. We're not afraid to tackle discussions from all perspectives, including yours. Don't forget, the briefing with me, Arlene Foster, every Friday at 3 p.m. on GB News.
Very good afternoon, everybody, and welcome back to GB News Live with me, Patrick Christys, here with you all the way through until 6 p.m. I really mean it when I say that when the big stories happen, they happen right here with me on GB News, because there's so much to come today. We're going live to Suella Braverman. She's going to be in the House of Commons shortly. We'll be bringing you the update there. She's got a lot to discuss, hasn't she? Because she stood down from Truss's government after admitting she sent confidential information from a personal email address. Now it looks as though that's a bit more serious. A total of 6 times. People say she should step down, but I want to know, do you care? Loads of emails have been flooding in on that so far. GBviews at gbnews.uk. The overwhelming consensus is no so far. Why, you may ask? Well, because of this, because the migrant crisis keeps on going. A firebomb attack was yesterday on a migrant holding centre in Ken, I've got serious concerns that stuff like this is going to keep on happening. It's raising tough questions for the Home Secretary. How on earth does she deal with this backlog of applications for asylum? People, I think, are wondering whether or not Britain is a bit full now. Plus, Just Stop Oil protesters have been arrested after spraying paint on the Home Office, MI5 and the Bank of England buildings. I'm asking, when will this action stop, as the police are left counting the hours that the officers are spending dealing with this bunch of utter numpties? And the Met Police Chief has removed around 1,000 young black men from a list of alleged gang members. It comes after Sir Mark Rowley's gang matrix was criticised as disproportionately targeting the black community. Is this the correct way to crack down on gang crime? What is not to like, people? We've got an action-packed hour coming your way. Get your views coming in thick and fast. Does charity start at home in relation to the migrant crisis? Do you think Britain is full? GBviews at gbnews.uk. They're the big ones. We're hanging the show on today, ladies and gentlemen. Be a part of it. I want to hear from you. But first, it's time for your latest headlines.
Patrick, thank you, and good afternoon to you. Our top story today, police have confirmed the suspect in the firebomb attack at a migrant centre in Dover is a 66-year-old man from High Wycombe in Buckinghamshire. Kent Police were called to the Border Force Immigration Centre yesterday, where the homemade devices had caused a fire, leaving 2 people with minor injuries. The suspect was found dead later on at a nearby petrol station. As you've been hearing, the Prime Minister says he has the full confidence in the Home Secretary after she admitted breaching the ministerial code on 6 separate occasions. Suella Braverman says she sent government documents to her personal email address between September the 6th and October the 16th. Writing to the Commons Home Affairs Select Committee, she set out her vision of the events leading to her resignation under the former Prime Minister Liz Truss. In the letter, she apologised for breaching the code, saying she also had apologised to Rishi Sunak when she was reappointed as Home Secretary. Meanwhile, the Home Secretary is under increasing pressure today over the backlog of migrants arriving in the UK and the conditions their processing centres are in. It's understood hundreds of migrants were moved to an already overcrowded facility in Kent at the weekend. An immigration watchdog said they were left speechless by the safety problems at the site located in Manston in Kent. Immigration Minister Robert Jenrick visited the site again yesterday and admitted the conditions were challenging. MP Mark Spencer told GB News the government's working hard to fix the problem.
Where we're working with local authorities. We've invested over £20 million with our local authorities up and down the country to accommodate people in different places around the UK. But the answer is a multiple choice question, if you like. So we need to get on with the Rwanda plan. We need to make sure we break the business model of those people coming across the channel exploiting people, and we need to process them at the other end and make sure we get to the right conclusions as quickly as possible.
Well, the Shadow Minister for Immigration, Stephen Kinnock, says processing backlogs actually encourage people smuggling.
People aren't going to pay a huge amount of money to come to the UK if they know that their claim is going to be processed in 2 or 3 months, and if they are not valid asylum seekers, they'll be removed from the country. What they now know now is, with these massive backlogs in the system where it's taking years to process, that just by getting to the UK, you're guaranteed to be able to stay here for a considerable amount of time.
Well, in other news today, the Home Secretary will be addressing the House of Commons at around 5 o'clock tonight on her previous resignation and the situation at the Manston Migrant Centre. You can watch that live right here, GB News. Now, 3 people have been arrested on suspicion of people smuggling offences as they attempted to bring a group of migrants to the UK. 2 of the men are from Basingstoke, the 3rd from Buckinghamshire. A joint operation between the National Crime Agency and the Belgian Federal Police stopped an inflatable boat off the coast of Belgium. 12 migrants believed to be Albanian nationals were also detained. Rishi Sunak's decision not to attend the UN's climate summit in Egypt next week is being kept under review. That's according to the Prime Minister's spokesperson. They say his attendance depends on progress made on preparation for the autumn budget due on the 17th of November. Last week, his office said he wasn't expected to travel to the event and he's focusing on pressing domestic issues. There's been a warning that all birds must soon be kept indoors across England to try to stop the spread of avian flu. From Monday the 7th of November, it will be a legal requirement to house flocks and follow stringent biosecurity measures in relation to birds. The decision extends mandatory housing orders already in force in Suffolk, Norfolk and parts of Essex. The Department for the Environment, Food and Rural Affairs says this year the UK has faced its largest ever outbreak of bird flu, with the disease detected at more than 70 premises this month alone. Now, parts of Ukraine are without power and water supplies today after Russia targeted critical energy facilities overnight. In the capital, Kyiv, a number of missiles damaged a hydroelectric power plant, leaving 350,000 homes in blackout. Several other cities have come under attack. In recent weeks, Russia has increased missile attacks on Ukraine after blaming Kyiv for an explosion that damaged a bridge linking Russia with annexed Crimea. At least 2 people have been arrested as climate activists targeted several major buildings in London this morning. Just Stop Oil activists sprayed orange paint from fire extinguishers on the Home Office, the MI5 building and the Bank of England. They're demanding the government halts all new oil and gas licences. It comes as a High Court judge ordered more than 180 people not to block roads in London after being arrested at protests in recent weeks. Firefighters have begun voting on whether to accept a 5% pay offer. The Fire Brigades Union is recommending its members reject the offer, claiming it represents a significant real terms pay cut against rising inflation. Online and postal ballots are being sent out today. Voting closes in 2 weeks' time. That's it. You're up to date on GB News. More news as it happens. Now back to Patrick.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Patrick Christys here on GB News Live. Now, some breaking news just in relation to, frankly, what we were hanging the show on anyway, actually, which is this suspected firebombing of the Border Force Immigration Detention Centre in Dover on Sunday. It's opened up a whole can of worms, this, hasn't it? Clearly, the actions taking place there were ridiculous, the actions of a dangerous lunatic, some people would say. But is it a wider picture? A lot of people maybe perhaps fed up with the situation that's been going on. Of course, that doesn't justify anything that's gone on, but it opens up again what's been going on with Suella Braverman. When is she going to get a grip with what's been happening in the Channel? How can she get a grip with what's been happening in the Channel? And even the wider picture on the basis of that as well. What can we do? Does charity start at home when it comes to housing some of these people? Migrant detention centres almost spilling over. We've got hotels being commandeered, private hotel rooms being used, private rental stock in local authorities being used. We've got social housing being used, talk of tent cities in a park near you being used. Is Britain full? Should charity start at home? We've got homeless veterans, we've got homeless women. In fact, there's been a sharp rise in the number of homeless women. GB Views at gbnews.uk. We're bringing you live, don't forget, Suella Braverman herself in the House of Commons very, very soon, as we understand it, so that's going to be one to watch. But before that, it is time for our Home and Security Editor, Mark White, with that breaking news on the Dover firebomb. Mark, talk to me. What is the latest?
Well, Patrick, Kent Police now confirming that the suspect who died after this firebomb attack on the processing centre here in Dover was a 66-year-old man who lived in High Wycombe in Buckinghamshire. And as we speak, there is a police search ongoing of a property in High Wycombe linked to this man, believed to be his home address. So police officers there now conducting a search as they try to get to the bottom of the motivation for yesterday's attack. We know that it was at 11:20 in the morning when this Seat white SUV pulled up outside the main perimeter, the main gate into the processing centre at Dover Harbour, and then the man was seen by witnesses throwing devices, improvised incendiary devices that caught fire and set fire to the perimeter fence. Very dramatic footage, of course, of the security personnel at the processing centre putting out the flames there. Then a Reuters photographer saw this man drive to a nearby petrol station, which was some 200-300 yards away from the scene of the fire that he'd caused. And at that point, the photographer said that he saw this man take his own life. As I say, we still await a response from Kent Police as to what the motivation was for this. So far, they've been saying they keep an open mind. We may get some more from Suella Braverman, the Home Secretary, as she addresses the House of Commons, both on the email faux pas that we've been told about, of course, and the incident that unfolded here, the very serious incident that unfolded here yesterday morning.
Mark, I'll just stay with you. We're going to go shortly to our political editor to talk about the kind of hot water that Suella Braverman is in ahead of her addressing the House of Commons live on this very show in about an hour's time. So make sure everyone watching at home or listening in your cars, whatever you're doing, you stay tuned for that. But Mark, serious concerns from, frankly, just ordinary members of the public. It's in my inbox right now. People saying, look, my local hotel has been commandeered. That's one thing. Then there's social housing stock. That's another thing. Then there's private rental stock. That's another thing. And we are hearing now, of course, that conditions and overcrowding in camps like the one, detention centres like the one that you're stood in front of there, is getting towards breaking point. And it raises the question, isn't it? Not necessarily is Britain full, that's a question for somebody else, but are these migrant detention centres full? Because if they are, these people are going to have to go somewhere else. And then where do they go?
Well, yeah, it's not so much that they're full. They were never meant to be makeshift refugee camps, which is the allegation that Suella Braverman has effectively turned them into refugee camps, that they were and are designed to be a processing point. They land on the boats, they're taken to Dover or to Manston, and then they're processed for no more than a few hours, 24 hours maximum. Then they're supposed to be farmed out to interim accommodation. And as you say, of course, it's the hotels, and that's why, of course, we're getting emails in from all over the country, because it is affecting people in towns and cities right across this country. There is scarcely a town or a city in the UK now that will not have had a hotel commandeered by the Home Office to put these asylum seekers in, because there are 40,000 at least rooms that are being rented every single day at a cost of £7 million a day. And of course, still the boats keep coming. 1,500 people arrived over the weekend. I'm getting reports now of another boat that has been spotted in the Channel. French and British authorities responding to that. It's in mid-channel as we speak. There's also reports, unconfirmed at the moment, that another migrant dinghy may have landed on the beach at St Leonard's, which is a fair distance from here. It's about an hour down the road in East Sussex. So where that boat set off from, I don't know, but conditions are very rough out there and the wind is picking up all the while.
Yeah, Mark, look, thank you very much. Expert stuff, that. Mark White joining us. Just in relation to that latest breaking news, the police have now come out and said that they believe that the suspect who was involved in that firebomb at that detention centre in Dover is a 66-year-old man from the High Wycombe area who then proceeded to take his own life shortly afterwards. Look, I've got a lot of you getting in touch. I'm keen to go to his emails soon. gbviews@gbnews.uk. In light of what we're seeing, which is detention centres full, not even supposed to be used for this, the length of time it's taking to process people, where on earth do we put them all? I'm asking whether or not charity should start at home. We approach the winter months, a sharp rise in female homelessness. We've always had a high level of veteran homelessness. The British Legion think between 3 and 6% of military personnel have gone on to become homeless. Hillary's been on, just a quick one. She says charity should always begin at home. If you look after your own people and problems first, then we'll be in a better position to help others. What do you think about that? Really, really serious questions now about whether or not Britain is full. And I'm sorry, but we've been warning about this for a very long time. If you don't do anything about these numbers, you have to confront some uncomfortable truths. And that is one of those uncomfortable truths. We are staring down the barrel now, ladies and gentlemen, of having to ask ourselves, as a nation, whether or not charity needs to start at home. And that's just because of the sheer numbers. Around 40,000 already this year, 1,500 over the weekend alone. And as our very own Mark White said there, at least 2 boats suspected to be in the water as we speak. But the Home Secretary, Suella Braverman, will face MPs within the next hour or so to explain the decisions behind the chaos at this migrant holding centre in Manston in Kent. Right on cue, former Immigration Minister Caroline Noakes spoke to GB News' very own Gloria Di Piero earlier today. Let's take a look and a listen.
There are no easy solutions. There is no one quick fix that's going to stop small boats crossing the Channel. I think we have to work much, much harder with the French. We have to make sure that we're smashing criminal gangs. We know that the going rate to be brought over in a small boat is about £5,000. We have to remove the access to fuel, the access to boats for the criminal gangs. I think that's really important. But we also, when people arrive here, we have to treat them like human beings. I'm appalled to hear of families living on rolled up mats in marquees for days and weeks on end. And I think it's absolutely imperative that the government recognises it has an absolute duty to these individuals and starts looking after them properly.
Do you think they do realise that, recognise that duty?
Well, I am horrified, and we have a statement this afternoon where the Home Secretary will be able to come and answer questions on whether she disregarded the legal duty to make sure that temporary accommodation was only temporary. But look, this creates an absolute legal minefield for the government that is going to end up costing them more money. And there are some estimates that every single one of those migrants who has been kept in Manston for longer than is absolutely necessary could be entitled to £5,000–6,000 worth of compensation, whether they are ultimately deemed to be an asylum seeker or not. And so that's going to be expensive for us, the taxpayer. And if the government faces many cases of judicial review because of these individual people could all bring a case of their own that they've been incorrectly kept at Manston, this begins to look like a system in absolute chaos. And ultimately, it's going to be the individual asylum seekers who suffer, the British taxpayer who suffers, and the Home Office's reputation for dealing with people in a fair and even-handed manner is going to be absolutely in tatters.
Well, I must say that was a couple of remarks there that have wound me up a little bit. That's former Immigration Minister Caroline Noakes, who presumably would just throw the gates open if they're not already open at the minute and potentially what? We all pick up the tab. It's not the sense that the government doesn't realise they've not got an absolute duty. It's the fact that we're being absolutely, completely and utterly overwhelmed, isn't it, Caroline? But anyway, we'll have to wait and see what she says to that. Our political editor, Darren McCaffrey, is in Westminster. And Darren, Suella Braverman is going to be live on this very show a little bit later on in the House of Commons, standing up. Lots to talk about in terms of the Migrant Detention Centre, yes, but also about this issue that she breached the ministerial code, not once, not twice, but as we understand it, 6 times. Talk to me.
Yeah, indeed. The statement is fundamentally meant to be about what happened in Dover over the weekend, both at those processing centres Dover in Kent and also in Manston in Kent as well. But you're right, many of the questions, I think, coming after that statement will be about this issue when it comes to the emails that we now know that she sent to a private email account from a work account, not just on one occasion, which ultimately led to her resignation a couple of weeks ago when Liz Truss was Prime Minister, do you remember that time, but actually 6 occasions in total since the start of September. Now, her argument is twofold. First of all, it was just a sensible thing to do. She was often on Zoom calls, on the move. She needed to have access to this information. Effectively, she needed 2 phones, so it was just practically sensible to do this, though it was a breach of the ministerial code. It's something she's admitted she has done, and she's apologised for it. The second argument is that actually, at the end of the day, these were not sensitive documents. They essentially were not going to compromise national security, if you like. Now, that's interesting because that version of events has been backed up by Downing Street, but at the time, Downing Street, by the way, with Rishi Sunak in charge, but at the time, on the Wednesday, less than 2 weeks ago when she had to resign, we were told the reason she had to go is because these were highly sensitive documents. So there seems to be a bit of disparity there. And also on the timeline of events, she's always argued that when she realised she'd made the mistake, she flagged this up to MPs and to the civil service. It's looking increasingly likely that effectively she had to own up after she was caught out. So there'll be lots of questions about this. Why does it matter? I think for 2 reasons, at least those that are pretty angry about it would say it matters, Patrick. First of all, that this does genuinely compromise potential security. She is the Home Secretary, after all. It's a very sensitive job. You shouldn't be making mistakes like this. And second of all, Labour would argue this is a sign that ultimately, at the end of the day, actually, it's the same old Tories, not much changed under Rishi Sunak. In the end, though, I think the more important issue today is what is happening at those processing camps in Kent and her role in possibly exacerbating the situation there. It will be a pretty interesting, pretty spicy moment of Parliament in just over an hour's time when she stands up at the dispatch box to answer those questions.
Darren, thank you very much. We'll be bringing that live. Darren McCaffrey, who is in Westminster, our political editor. And yes, you did hear him correctly. We are going to be going to the House of Commons in not that long, actually, to listen to Suella Braverman, who's going to be, I suppose, explaining what's been going on at these migrant detention centres. How do you feel? The fact is, ladies and gentlemen, if those centres are overwhelmed and there's nowhere else to put them, then the simple logic of the situation is that we can expect to see situations like we've seen in France, can't we? Where you've essentially got migrant camps with behind barbed wire. Do you want that in your local area? I don't know. Let me know. GBViews at GBNews. Corinne certainly doesn't. She's been in touch to say that actually she doesn't particularly like the idea. This is GBNews Live with me, Patrick Christys. Here's what I've got coming up. Another Just Stop Oil protesters targeted 4 buildings, including the Home Office. It's part of a month of daily protests, which has taken up valuable police time, around 7,900 hours of it, to be precise. I'll be asking if this is putting unnecessary demands on our police. That is after this very short break. Don't you dare move.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal.
that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked. Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Hello, I'm Alastair Stewart, and I'd invite you to join me at noon on Saturdays and Sundays for Alastair Stewart and Friends. I've been in this business for over 40 years. Now, here at GB News, I've never been happier. I get to choose the big stories that really interest me. We hear what you have to say, and you hear what I have to say. I really hope you can join me, noon on Saturdays and Sundays.
I'm Mark Dolan. Join me at 11 on GB News for Headliners, in which I'll be joined by two of the UK's top comedians discussing tomorrow's papers. If it's an important story, we'll cover it, but we'll have some fun along the way. Headliners, the late-night paper review that won't send you to sleep like the others will. 7 nights a week at 11 p.m. on GB News.
Weekday afternoons on GB News, we've got the whole of the UK covered. From 12 to 3, it's GB News Day with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Gloria Di Piero. You'll get the very latest on everything that's been going on across our great nation.
And from 3 till 6, watch out for GB News Live with me, Patrick Christys. I'm not here to mess around. With all the biggest topics and guests, you will always be up to date. GB News Day and GB News Live from 12 p.m.
Only on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Yeah, welcome back, everybody. Patrick Christys here with GB News Live. As I was saying before the break, make sure you stay tuned because Suella Braverman is coming up live here on this show in the House of Commons. Serious questions about what's been going on at migrant detention centres, how on earth she's going to sort that out. Also, over her own future as well, as it's emerged that potentially she broke that ministerial code 6 times. Big questions for you. GBviews at gbnews.uk. Do you care about breaking the code? Do you think that maybe Britain is now full? Should charity start at home? What are your views? But before that, the Met Police have said that the Just Stop Oil protests have cost the police a total of 7,900 shifts so far this month. After their month-long protest, just a month. Matt Twist, the Assistant Commissioner at the Met, said the size of the policing operation necessary to control the protest means the Met has fewer resources to tackle priority issues such as knife crime. I mean, obviously. Earlier today, Just Stop Oil hit 4 targets on what they say is their final day of month-long protest. 6 activists sprayed orange paint across the Home Office, MI5, the Bank of England and Rupert Murdoch's News UK headquarters at London Bridge. City of London Police said 2 people were arrested outside the Bank of England. Let's talk now to Graham Wetton, who's a police commentator and author of How to Be a Police Officer. Thank you very much. I suppose now there's a chapter on that book in How to Be a Police Officer that just says when some numpty glues themselves to a road, you have to go and give them cups of tea, is there?
No, and I think that was only, from all the videos I've seen, that happened on one occasion for all the protests. So, and I think the Commissioner then came out and said, we're not doing that anymore, which tells you how I used to police these protests.
Yeah, OK, so the amount of police time wasted in all of this, 7,900 police shifts. You look at the number of people who must have been inconvenienced, the cost to our economy on top of that, the sheer level of criminal damage that's been committed as well with the orange paint. 4 different sites hit today. Why aren't Just Stop Oil a designated terror group and locked up?
Well, that's a question for the government and the Home Secretary. It's not a question for the police officers. They're either dealing with the protests or the command scene. The difficulty you've got here is because the police have to react to wherever they're going to turn up, and London is a big place, and we've seen they've literally targeted various areas right the way across London, you have to have enough resources to react reasonably quickly to turn up, and specialist units as well. So it's no surprise that those figures that Mr Twist put out were 7,900 officers. And it's officers' shifts. The officers that respond to these protests are uniformed response officers in a majority. So they would ordinarily be out driving response vehicles in London boroughs, but they're taken into central London, put on central London reserve to stand by and see where these protests take place, and then drive to it and react to it.
I'm just looking at some pictures there, and our radio listeners, I'll describe them to you. It's a load of Just Stop Oil numpties sat in a road with what looks to be as many police officers as them. Does it take that many police officers to actually attend that particular scene? Because you've even got other ones there, specialist anti-glue units.
Yeah, it depends on the situation and where they are. That looks like a fairly busy junction, probably, if my geography is right, probably around London Bridge area. So you've got to have officers there to control the traffic, try and keep members of the public who want to express an opinion, etc. So the others are there just to maintain some form of order, while the specialist teams have a safe area to work in, so people can't either walk up and try dragging people away or intervene in any way. So you do need the other officers there.
But the concern, I suppose, will be about the impact this is having on tackling other serious crime. And can you discuss that a little bit with me? Because 7,900 shifts of police officers wasted with this Just Stop Oil lot in the space of a month alone. The vast majority of that in London, one would imagine probably all of it really in London. That's a huge amount of police time wasted. 2 people were shot dead in Brixton last night, and that kind of puts it into context, doesn't it?
Yeah, as you highlighted, there's a couple of shootings last night in South London. I think there's a stabbing today in East London. These serious crimes are taking place, and the resources that respond to those type of incidents are being distracted or delayed. They're being taken out onto these types of protests, which has gone on for a month now. So it's a huge drain on police resources to deal with 999 calls.
Can I post a radical solution? Let the public deal with them.
Yeah, the issue with that is what you see there is that's tantamount to an assault. You can use.
Well, I get that, and I can understand why you wouldn't want to come out in favour of that. But we're taught as children, aren't we? You put your hand in a fire, you get burnt. If you decide to put your hand on a hot stove, you get burnt. If you decide to sit in the road and hold someone up on their way to work, I'm sorry, but you get dragged off the road or maybe even hit.
Yeah, but Patrick, it wouldn't end there, would it? That would escalate. We both know that would escalate. Somebody would use more force than is reasonable. Someone would react to it, and somebody else would join in and react to it. And before you know it, you've got large-scale disorder on your hands in the centre of a busy road. So that would actually make things a lot worse, which is why you've got the uniformed officers there to try and maintain some form of order while they actually remove the people either locked on or glued on. And the officers standing around are there to arrest the people. So the specialist teams can be kept to one side to deal with any more incidents that occur.
Does it frustrate you when people look at this and go, what on earth are the police doing in this situation? You know, if they're not standing around offering someone from Just Stop Oil a cup of tea, they're doing the Macarena at a gay pride event.
Frustration is probably the wrong word. I can understand the frustration when you look at it, because if you look at it, and I speak to loads of people outside police and ask me exactly the same things. Why aren't they doing this? I mean, the dancing stuff is in the right place and time. It's okay, but not for every. Not
yeah,
for
like when we've stopped murder and stuff. I do take your point, though. Yeah.
Yeah, but I can see the frustration and why people. If I were getting stopped now, I'll be getting quite upset with it all. But from the officer's perspective, they have to abide by the law. We've got the policing that society apparently wants by being accountable to the law, to being proportionate, being reasonable, listening to everybody, allowing and facilitating lawful protest. And the courts have decided that this form of protest is lawful.
Yeah,
so they have to abide by the law.
Graham, I feel so sorry for police a lot of the time in this country because their hands are tied, aren't they, when it comes to stuff like this. I've got no doubt whatsoever that the vast majority, if not all of those police officers on those 7,900 shifts wasted dealing with Just Stop Oil would much rather be out tackling violent crime, burglaries, thefts, whatever. I've got no doubt about that. And they must hate it when the public has stood there shouting, what are you doing, what are you doing? Well, they are there to enforce the law, and I suppose some would argue until the law changes, they've got to sit there and do what they're doing. Graham, thank you very much. Graham Weston there, who's a police commentator and author of How to Be a Police Officer. Now, hundreds of people have been removed from a gang database created after the 2011 London riots. Is this the right move to bring law and order back to the streets of Britain? Some people say that gang matrix was racist. What do you think about all of that? I will ask that question next. We're also going to be returning to the issues, the ongoing issues that are taking place at migrant detention centres. One was firebombed over the weekend. 1,500 migrants came over the weekend as well. So Ella Braverman herself will be live here on GB News very, very shortly to answer some very serious questions. But before that, it's your latest headlines.
Patrick, thank you. The latest top stories this hour. The suspect in a firebomb attack at a migrant centre in Dover has been confirmed by police as a 66-year-old man from High Wycombe in Buckinghamshire. Kent police were called to the Border Force Immigration Centre yesterday, where homemade devices caused a fire, leaving 2 people with minor injuries. The suspect was later found dead at a nearby petrol station. The Prime Minister says he has the full confidence in the Home Secretary after she admitted breaching the ministerial code on 6 separate occasions. Suella Braverman says she sent government documents to her personal email address between September the 6th and October the 16th. Writing to the Commons Home Affairs Select Committee, she said she'd apologised to Rishi Sunak when she was reappointed as Home Secretary. Meanwhile, Suella Braverman is under increasing pressure over the backlog of migrants arriving in the UK and the conditions of their processing centres. It's understood hundreds of migrants were moved to an already overcrowded facility in Kent at the weekend. An immigration watchdog has said they were left speechless by safety problems at the site in Manston in Kent. And the Home Secretary will be addressing the House of Commons in just over half an hour on her previous resignation and the situation at Manston Migrant Centre. You can watch that live right here, GB News. Now, 3 people have been arrested on suspicion of people smuggling offences as they attempted to bring a group of migrants to the UK. 2 of the men are from Basingstoke and the 3rd is from Buckinghamshire. A joint operation between the National Crime Agency and the Belgian Federal Police stopped the inflatable boat off the coast of Belgium. 12 migrants believed to be Albanian nationals were also detained. And Rishi Sunak's decision not to attend the UN's climate summit in Egypt next week is being kept under review. That's according to the Prime Minister's spokesperson. They say his attendance depends on progress made on preparation for the autumn budget due on the 17th of November. Last week, his office said he wasn't expected to travel to the event as he's focusing on pressing domestic issues. And a warning that all birds must soon be kept indoors across England to try to stop the spread of avian flu. The Department for the Environment, Food and Rural Affairs said from Monday the 7th of November it will be a legal requirement to house flocks. This year, the UK has faced its largest ever outbreak of bird flu, with the disease detected at more than 70 premises alone this month. That's it. You're up to date on TV, online and DAB+ radio. You're with GB News. Don't go anywhere. Back in a moment.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Esther McVeigh.
And I'm Philip Davis.
Whether you're watching or listening on TV, online or on radio, we handpick the latest stories, debates and expert opinions for your weekend. So whether that's politics, news or showbiz, we've got it covered.
Join us every Saturday morning at 10 o'clock on GB News.
We are GB News.
And we'd like to say thank you
To each and every one of you.
for helping our great nation
Find its voice.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Across England,
Scotland,
Wales and Northern Ireland.
On TV,
On radio.
and online.
We're proud to be
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
On the Mark Steyn Show, we cover the stories a lot of people are scared even to mention. The stuff that really matters with some of the world's biggest thinkers.
Now is his opportunity to kind of take the steering wheel of history.
Break away from the flop at 8 o'clock on GB News with the Mark Steyn Show.
On Mark Dolan Tonight, we have a simple plan, which is to inform, stimulate and entertain in equal measure. It's all about getting your opinions on the national television airwaves. I love my viewer emails, mark@gbnews.uk. So do join me from 9 p.m. to midnight every Friday, Saturday and Sunday for big guests, big opinions and a big presenter. 6'5", don't you know? See you then on GB News.
Welcome back, everybody. Now, loads of you have been getting in touch with your thoughts on illegal immigration and hotel accommodation. I wanted to shine a light on this because shortly, in probably about 20 minutes' time, actually, so get your popcorn ready, Suella Braverman is going to be addressing the House of Commons. A few things she's going to be talking about there. Yes, there's this issue when it comes to her breaking the ministerial code 6 times, as we understand it. She did resign over this. Now, apparently, obviously back again. Did Rishi Sunak know everything that was going on there? You can just see slightly Liam Halligan in your shot there, who's going to be giving you some economic updates shortly. But before that, we are going to be talking about that. So Suella Braverman live here just after 5, as we understand it. But more so than that, the issues that have been going on at various different migrant detention centres. It raises some serious questions that a lot of you have been commenting in on GBViews at gbnews.uk. If there's huge overcrowding at these places, where do we put a lot of these people? Well, we put them in hotels. Well, what about a lot of those hotels being full? Something like 7 million quid a day it's taking to accommodate people in those hotels. Fine, so the hotels are full. So we go to social housing stock. Well, what about that being full now, which it is in a lot of local areas? What about private rental stock, the lower end of the private rental stock? Well, now that is being squeezed as well. Do we end up with things like tent cities in a park near you? How would you feel about that? Unfortunately, ladies and gentlemen, I believe we are in a situation where we're having to start to seriously ask 2 important questions. Is Britain full, and does charity have to start at home? Because whilst we're helping a lot of these people, are we doing enough to help people like homeless military veterans? The number of homeless women is rising as well. Lots of you are getting in touch on these very issues. Barry says charity does start at home, and there are over 1 million of our own people on housing waiting lists, and enough is now enough. And I think now is the key word, because, Barry, if you were like me, I've got every sympathy for people. Don't get me wrong. People need help. But we are where we are, as they say, normally in middle management somewhere at an industrial estate in Slough. But we are where we are, OK? And, frankly, is now enough. To house migrants at over 7 million quid a day, Barry continues, when there is talk of the triple lock will not be maintained. There you go. It's unfair to our elderly who've worked hard all their lives, Elizabeth says. We've had decades and decades of mismanagement on this migrant issue, and now it has literally reached breaking point. We are also at serious risk of a powder keg situation erupting, and we will witness something that none of us want to see. Well, again, Elizabeth, have we not already witnessed something that we don't want to see? A chap who's believed to be a 66-year-old man from the High Wycombe area lobbed a load of petrol bombs at a migrant detention centre just this weekend. He then went on to kill himself. Now, of course, we're yet to find out all the full details of this, but I've got serious concerns about this happening. I tell you what I've got serious concerns about migrants being put in some of these hotels in the middle of communities. All too often, if the one near me in Maidenhead, for example, is anything to go by, very near a school, it only takes a couple of people to abscond from there and for something terrible to happen to somebody young or some woman walking home from a night out or something like that. And goodness gracious me, it won't take much for the pitchforks to be out, will it? And residents being absolutely up in arms. Do we want to see that? Will that be down to bad public nature, evil, to racism? No, I think it will be down to government mismanagement year on year on year and allowing this country to hit the kind of breaking point that Elizabeth just talks about. And that is where we are. Is Britain full? Do you think that charity should start at home? Lydia's been in touch. We need to look after our own first. We cannot take any more migrants, economic or otherwise. Well, I mean, that's strong stuff, to be fair, Lydia, because we do actually need migration. But the problem is, if we've got a lot of illegal immigration and we've got huge amounts of legal migration as well, it's resources and it's places to live. But it's not just places to live. It's doctors' surgeries, it's local schools, it's shops, it's all of it. It's one thing saying, OK, we need to be welcoming for these people, but do you not think that's a little bit tin-eared sometimes? Do you not think that's a little bit burying their heads in the sand? Because, OK, let's say we let them all in. The argument now has shifted. If you listen to this, Lydia, the argument has now shifted from all of these people are refugees and asylum seekers. We now know that not to be true because the sheer volumes of people coming from Albania and coming not just from Albania, but to work here in illegal underground economy and then take a lot of money out of the country back to Albania or other places. So they've had to shift their argument. Now the argument is we need to process these people quicker. All right, OK, yeah, fine, we do. But what happens in terms of when they've been processed and we tell them that they can stay, which you seem to do a lot of the time anyway, where do we put them? We have not got the infrastructure for this. Ladies and gentlemen, we have not got the infrastructure for this. GBViews at gbnews.uk. Just to remind you, we are going to be going live to Suella Braverman very, very shortly in the House of Commons, who's got a lot of serious questions to ask. So thank you, everyone who's been getting in touch. I've really enjoyed your emails. Keep them coming in. We are the People's Channel, and we like to hear what the people think about what's going on in the channel as well. But convenience shops, moving on, across the country, have been giving families the chance to buy a basket of groceries worth £10 for 1p. Goodness gracious me, I need to get myself there. The scheme has been run in conjunction with the Snappy Shopper delivery app, and 13,000 bundles have already been sold this month. Well, our Yorkshire reporter, Anna Riley, went to Batley to find out more.
A bag full of food and drink essentials at the price of just a penny. A lifeline for customers of Note's family-run convenience store in Batley. At a time when people across the country are choosing between heating and eating, shopkeepers like Serge are quite literally helping to put food on the table.
The family's had the store for 46 years. I've been actively working in these shops for about 23 years. And since COVID, we've actually seen a lot of people struggling, reaching out to convenience stores, reaching out to local stores more and more, community. And with us being a community store, we've had to step up our game. Recently, due to the cost of living crisis, we've seen a lot of people struggling to pay the food bills. So when we teamed up with Snappy Shopper, we just thought it was a really good thing that, you know, what they're coming out with. Last week we did another penny bundle, which was our biggest ever offer we've done in the store in 47 years. We did about £10 worth of groceries, and we sold it for a penny through our delivery service, and we delivered it to the door. We did over 200 in 3 days, but I do know that Snappy Shopper did well over 10,000 bags up and down the country.
The scheme works through the Snappy Shopper delivery app, and it's helped to keep the business running.
It's helping us grow our sales, which we need to do to help with the rising costs we've incurred with the electricity going up, food prices are going up, gas bills are going up. For ourselves, not as an individual. So we have to find more income coming in because we were just we were surviving prior to all the cost of living crisis. But with the cost of living crisis up, we need to do more to stand still. My saying is we're having to run just to stand still.
For Snappy Shopper, community's at the heart of the offer.
We're enabling that retailer via Snappy Shopper to, grow their business through delivery. But equally, we want to support that retailer's pillar in the community.
A food delivery service that's delivering for the community in a cost of living crisis. Anna Riley, GB News, Batley.
OK, well, from October the 1st, households which pay for their utilities using prepayment meters should have begun to receive their first £400 instalments of the government's energy bill support scheme. But according to industry analysts, which is a very difficult phrase to say, industry analysts, many have failed to do so, with surveys suggesting that only around half of those eligible have so far redeemed vouchers providing help with their bills. I was having a chat with my producer earlier on, and I'm trying to figure out whether or not I am now sitting on £400 that I am yet to use. Well, hopefully here to clear this up is our economics and business editor, Liam Halligan, with On the Money. Liam, should it be on the money or where's my money? Am I owed 400 quid?
Well, as of the 1st of October, this is quite complex, so strap yourself in. As of the 1st of October, all households across the UK get 400 quid off their energy bills. Now, if you pay with a direct debit, which I suspect you do. Then either £400 will be taken off in increments of 66, 67 quid a month over 6 months, because the scheme from the beginning of October for 6 months, or your energy company might credit you that £400. So you'll have to watch that closely, because those credits can sit on your account for a long time and you never quite know where they go. But the issue we've got here is this energy support scheme. It's from the 1st of October. It's 400 quid each. Automatic deduction for you, me, most of us, like 7/8 of all households that have got direct debits. But if you're on a prepayment meter, right, that's about 4 million households, then you get a voucher in lieu of that 400 quid, because you don't actually get an electricity bill through the post, OK? You don't have a direct debit because you might not have a bank account, you might be in receipt of benefits, and the energy company might not actually, think you're creditworthy. So you have to pay up front at a corner shop or at the post office. Now, A lot of GB News viewers and listeners will know about this. Prepayment people do pay more for their energy. It's 4 million households across the UK. The vouchers for this 400 quid, 66 or 67 quid a month, they're being sent out by post, by email, by text, a range of these things. But of course, a lot of people, particularly if they're, being cared for by local authorities or whatever, they may have been moving house quite a lot. Their vouchers may not have got to them. They may not have the same phone number that the authorities have had for them before. So they may not get their vouchers. And these vouchers are redeemable at the post office or at PayPoint, which is a meter provider. You often get them in corner shops in areas where lots of people are on prepayment meters. But the evidence from the post office and from PayPoint, who are one of the meter providers, they don't quite know, Patrick, but they suggest so far that about half the vouchers are not being redeemed, right? So there's money on the table that theoretically and actually lower income, more vulnerable households need to use, and they're not actually redeeming that money. And I talked about this to a guy called Greg Marsh, who's well known to GB News viewers. He's often appeared with me, and he is like a consultant for people who are trying to budget their household income. And this is what Greg Marsh said.
The scheme was set up in a way that doesn't make it easy for those who are most vulnerable. 4 and something million households in the UK on prepayment meters. About half of them so far haven't cashed in those vouchers. They have 90 days to do that. Unfortunately, unless they do, that money where it's most needed is going to go to waste. So you've got to act now. And let's hope the next time the government supports people on lower incomes, it does so in a way that makes it much easier for them to benefit.
OK, Liam, now, some people would say, well, it's up to these people to go out and take it. But I suppose the other argument is they're not being told enough. They're not being told it's available. It should be rammed down their throat.
This is the thing. Now, these vouchers, they last for 90 days. In other words, 3 months, right? So if you got your vouchers, if you know that your vouchers are there, if you've been informed of your vouchers through the post, through a text, through email or whatever it is, then those vouchers last 90 days. So you may be storing them up. So you use them when it gets a lot colder. But my point is, and I don't want to scare anyone, if you've got those vouchers, then they last for 90 days. But there may be people who feel they're eligible for this 400 quid, and if they're on prepayment, then they are, and they haven't yet learned about the vouchers. They don't know where they are. And in that case, you have to hunt them down. I would go to Citizens Advice Bureau, I would go to your local benefit office, and I would say, I am on a prepayment meter, where are my vouchers? Where's my 400 quid? Because all the posh folk on the hill who are paying by direct debit, they get cheaper electricity anyway a lot of the time, and they are having their 400 quid automatically accounted for on their bills without doing anything. There's a certain thing in our industry, Patrick, news you can use, right? And that's what I'm trying to do here today, telling people if they are on prepayment, they're entitled to that 400 quid, hunt it down.
Yet another vital public service provided by our very own Liam Halligan, our economics and business editor. Thank you very, very much, Liam. Right, now, moving away from that, this is a story that involves the police. It involves violent crime. It involves, some would argue, racism. Met Commissioner Sir Mark Rowley has said that a controversial Met Police list of alleged gang members, mainly targeted black men, amplified disproportionately and must be radically reform. It's like a gang matrix. So those on the list could be subject to measures such as losing housing or driver's licences as part of what's been called lawful harassment, leading to critics saying it unfairly encroaches on young people's lives when they pose little to no risk of violence. Mark Rowley acknowledged that the gangs violence matrix does need to be redesigned and vowed to implement reform. I've got loads of questions on this, OK, because we had Sadiq Khan, didn't we, the mayor of nothing, as far as I can see, the mayor of London anyway, standing up and going, oh, we've lost faith in the police are institutionally racist. So now we have a new Met chief who has to be seen to be doing something. Is it just a case of the fact that he's gone, well, this particular gang matrix appeared to have a disproportionate number of black people on it. I'm going to remove some of those people from that now so I don't look racist. I can say I've done something. Meanwhile, what does that actually mean for crime on the streets of Britain? Former Detective Chief Superintendent of the Met Police, Kevin Hurley, joins me now. Kevin, thank you very much. How easy is it to get onto this gang matrix? Do you just wander in there and have your rights curtailed, or do you actually have to be realistically in a gang?
Of course not. The bottom line on it is if you are known to be associated with a gang known for extremely ferocious and dangerous violence, you are likely to be included on that as known associates. Now, there probably is a case to say reduce the numbers on it, and the information commissioners have said that, because there are so many on it that the Met cannot possibly keep tabs on them. And the idea behind it is, if you've got 500 odd people on there who you know are bad boys, and you can't catch them for stabbing, shooting, or generally beating people, then what you do is you will harass them in different ways, like finding reasons to stop them for problems with their driving, take the driving licence away from them, get them for drink driving, get them for riding their pedal bike on the pavement. Anything is...
Yeah, minor stuff, make it inconvenience. Kevin, a lot of people would say that's good policing. And I have to believe you when you say that it's relatively difficult to get onto a gang matrix. You have to be associated with gangsters. I would say it's got nothing to do with racism. It's got everything to do with the kind of company that you keep, and you should change that if you don't want to be harassed by police.
Well, broadly speaking, it has nothing to do with racism. I know when I was in the Met, 85% of the most violent gangs in the Metropolitan Police, and I was at the centre when we were doing that, were black people or black youths. So this is the reality of London. I think it's a prudent move to reduce the numbers on the list, but let's not spin it that this is a matrix that's created by the Met because they are racist. It's a matrix or a list created because people get on it because they're associated with gangs or they are known to be violent. That's why they're on it. That's a list of bad boys that you need to focus on.
We have to be very clear on something now, Kevin, and our viewers and our listeners deserve an answer to this, which is this list being reduced in a bid to try to ease community tensions and try to be seen to not be racist, or is the real reason the fact that the police don't have the resources to actually tackle it? Both of those things are bad, but if it's the first one, and if it's the one where police are doing this because they want to ease those community tensions, win back trust and all of this stuff, then that is woke culture getting in the way of law and order.
Well, I think it's a useful fob to throw off to those who criticise the police. And quite rightly, it's listening to what the information commissioners have said, which is weed this list down. But the reality of it, the Metropolitan Police have not got the resources and the quality investigators and detectives to focus on those number of people on it. So it's probably, in just prudent terms, sensible to chop the numbers down and focus on the worst of them. But I think the timing fits in to some extent with what you said.
Absolutely. Look, Kevin, thank you very much. Kevin Hurley there, former Detective Chief Superintendent of the Met Police. Great to have your insight on that. How do you feel about that, ladies and gentlemen, the fact that this gang matrix is being reduced? I suspect there's more than a little whiff of wokeism about all of this stuff. They keep getting a battering, the Met, don't they? You need to rebuild community trust. You need to stop being racist and all of this stuff. Meanwhile, a load of people get booted off a gang matrix and we don't know what they're getting up to. I've got to leave you hanging, I'm afraid, ladies and gentlemen, because very, very shortly, and this is big, Suella Braverman is going to be taking to the plinth in the House of Commons, and she's going to be discussing serious stuff. Firstly, should she resign over the fact that, apparently anyway, 6 times she broke the ministerial code? Do you care about that? The overwhelming consensus in my inbox is no, and the reason why you're saying no, GBViews at GBNews.uk, from what I'm reading right in front of me now, is that you care more about what's been going on in the Channel. You care more about illegal immigration. 1,500 people came across that small body of water over the weekend alone. That brings our total to 40,000 for the year already. Migrant detention centres are now overflowing. Someone firebombed one of them over the weekend. We've got the latest on that, by the way. And I am asking the big questions here, the questions that maybe other people are too afraid to ask, frankly, which is Britain now full? And do you think charity should start at home? Because it is not going to end anytime soon, this. We've got overflowing detention centres. They want to speed up the asylum process. Well, where do we put them all? Hotels are full. We've got private rental accommodation at full. Social housing at full. Are we going to end up with tent cities in a park near you? And, as far as I can see, massive social unrest. GBViews at GBNews.uk. I've got the weather first, but when I come back, we are going to be hearing live from our Home Secretary. Don't go anywhere.
Hello.
It's turning increasingly wet out there through the rest of the day, especially during the evening and overnight. It will also turn increasingly windy, but of course with the wind and the rain, temperatures will be kept above average for the time of year. Our weather is still coming in from the southwest at the moment, and we've seen this slow-moving weather front across Northern Ireland and Western Scotland. That's been bringing some persistent rain through the day so far. It will continue to be slow-moving, and so with the rain building up across Northern Ireland, could be a few issues heading into the evening, especially around the rush hour period. Elsewhere across the country, spells of rain or showers move up from the south. Some very wet weather across central parts of the UK for a time before it all pushes eastwards overnight. And then the winds pick up. 12 Celsius in the south, 10 further north, but a very blustery end to the night. In fact, along English Channel coasts, there's the risk of 60, perhaps even 70 mile-per-hour wind gusts first thing Tuesday, and that could cause some issues during the morning rush hour, for example. Otherwise, the main area of rain pushes into the Northern Isles and stays there through much of the day on Tuesday. Showers follow, and it stays very blustery, especially across southern areas. Again, risk of gales around exposed coasts in the south and southwest. That'll make it feel a bit colder than recent days, 15 or 16 in the south, 13 or 14 further north. I think the sunniest skies through Tuesday will be across northern England, eastern Scotland, but here, well, we'll also see showers arriving thick and fast well into Tuesday evening and the early hours of Wednesday. By the end of Wednesday, some drier and clearer interludes, and with the winds easing by this stage, temperatures will fall into the single figures. So I think a colder feel first thing Wednesday compared with recent mornings, but bright skies certainly for northeast Scotland, for much of England and Wales during the morning, and then, well, wet and windy weather soon sweeps back into Northern Ireland and Western Scotland, and then eventually reaching much of England and Wales through Wednesday night and into Thursday. It's going to stay windy with the strongest winds in the west.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and TuneIn apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
Join me, Arlene Foster, for the briefing on GB News. Every Friday at 3 p.m, I'll give you all the latest political news and analysis, and we'll have robust live debate. To make sure that you're caught up on all of the biggest issues of the day, we'll bring on experts in their field. I'll ask the questions that you'd like to ask. We're not afraid to tackle discussions from all perspectives, including yours. Don't forget, the briefing with me, Arlene Foster, every Friday at 3 p.m. on GB News.
Hello, I'm Alastair Stewart, and I'd invite you to join me at noon on Saturdays and Sundays for Alastair Stewart and Friends. I've been in this business for over 40 years. Now, here at GB News, I've never been happier. I get to choose the big stories that really interest me. We hear what you have to say, and you hear what I have to say. I really hope you can join me, noon on Saturdays and Sundays.
Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to GB News Live with me, Patrick Christys, and we are, yet again, on Suella Braverman watch, ladies and gentlemen. Our Home Secretary is set to be talking in the House of Commons, frankly, any minute now. We're going to be lobbing it over to her straight away as soon as we get word that she has taken to her feet. She did stand down from Liz Truss's government after admitting sending confidential information to her personal email address, but as ever, things rumble on, and she's now admitted to 6 breaches of the ministerial code. She's due to answer an emergency question brought by Labour's Shadow Home Secretary Yvette Cooper. That's going to be, well, now, in a few minutes, whenever. We'll keep you up to date with that. We'll bring you that live. But, of course, there's loads more to get stuck into as well with her, because it's emerged that the man suspected of throwing a firebomb at that Dover migrant processing centre was a 66-year-old man from High Wycombe. Police are currently searching that property. We're going to be bringing you that live. Let's just stay with this for a second as well, because we are going to be discussing the economic impact of migration into the UK, the economic impact of what's been going on in the Channel. Roughly speaking, around £7 million a day. It's costing us in hotels. I've been asking you throughout, whether or not you think that Britain is full, whether or not you think charity starts at home. Just to emphasise again, stay with us right here on GB News Live, because we will be going live to that House of Commons in a matter of minutes, hopefully, to hear from our Home Secretary. But if we get round to it, all poultry and captive birds in England are to be kept indoors. Yes, that's right, Bernard Matthews was way ahead of his time. That's under government orders because the national risk of bird flu in wild birds was raised to, quote, very high. The whole of the UK has now been made a bird flu prevention zone. We'll bring you that. All the big news here. And as always, I want you to know what you're thinking. Email me, gbviews@gbnews.uk. Loads that you have. The email inbox has absolutely popped off today. gbviews@gbnews.uk. Get them coming in. Just again, cheeky little reminder, stay right where you are, because any minute now, Suella Braverman is going to be live in the House of Commons answering some very serious questions. Here's your headlines.
Yes, we are keeping an eye out for that speech in the House of Commons by the Home Secretary. But in the meantime, let's bring you up to date with the latest news. Police have confirmed the suspect in a firebomb attack at a migrant centre in Dover is a 66-year-old man from High Wycombe in Buckinghamshire. Kent Police were called to the Border Force Immigration Centre yesterday, where the homemade devices had caused a fire, leaving 2 people with minor injuries. The suspect was found dead at a nearby petrol station. And the Prime Minister has said he has full confidence in Suella Braverman as Home Secretary after she admitted breaching the ministerial code on 6 separate occasions. She says she sent government documents to her personal email address between September the 6th and October the 16th this year. Writing to the Commons Home Affairs Select Committee, she set out her version of events leading to her resignation under the former Prime Minister Liz Truss. In the letter, she also apologised for breaching the code, saying she'd apologised to Rishi Sunak when she was reappointed to the job as Home Secretary. Meanwhile, the Home Secretary is under increasing pressure over the backlog of migrants arriving into the UK and the conditions their processing centres are in. It's understood hundreds of migrants were moved to an already overcrowded facility in Kent at the weekend. An immigration watchdog has said they were left speechless by the safety problems at the site in Manston. Immigration Minister Robert Jenrick visited the site yesterday and admitted the conditions were challenging. MP Mark Spencer told GB News the government is working hard to fix the problem.
We're working with local authorities. We've invested over £20 million with our local authorities up and down the country to accommodate people in different places around the UK. But the answer is a multiple choice question, if you like. So we need to get on with the Rwanda plan. We need to make sure we break the business model of those people coming across the channel exploiting people, and we need to process them at the other end and make sure we get to the right conclusions as quickly as possible.
Meanwhile, the Shadow Minister for Immigration, Steve Kinnock, says processing backlogs actually encourage people smuggling.
People aren't going to pay a huge amount of money to come to the UK if they know that their claim is going to be processed in 2 or 3 months, and if they are not valid asylum seekers, they'll be removed from the country. What they now know is, with these massive backlogs in the system where it's taking years to process, that just by getting to the UK, you're guaranteed to be able to stay here for a considerable amount of time.
Meanwhile, 3 people have been arrested on suspicion of people smuggling offences as they attempted to bring a group of migrants to the UK. 2 of the men are from Basingstoke, the 3rd from Buckinghamshire, and a joint operation between the National Crime Agency and the Belgian Federal Police stopped an inflatable boat off the coast of Belgium. 12 migrants, believed to be Albanian nationals, were also detained. And a warning that all birds must soon be kept indoors across England to try to stop the spread of avian flu. From Monday the 7th of November, it'll be a legal requirement to house flocks and follow stringent biosecurity measures. The decision extends mandatory housing orders already in force in Suffolk, Norfolk and parts of Essex. The Department for Environment, Food and Rural Affairs say this year the UK has faced its largest ever outbreak of bird flu, with the disease detected at more than 70 premises this month alone. Now, the Foreign Secretary James Cleverly says Vladimir Putin is exacting revenge for his military failures on the civilians of Ukraine by cutting off their power and water supply. Parts of Ukraine are without power and water supplies after Russia targeted crucial energy facilities overnight. In the capital, Kyiv, a number of missiles damaged a hydroelectric power plant, leaving 350,000 homes in darkness. Several other cities have come under attack. In recent weeks, Russia has increased missile attacks on Ukraine after blaming Kyiv for an explosion that damaged a bridge linking Russia with annexed Crimea. Here, a High Court judge has ordered more than 180 people not to block roads in London after being arrested at Just Stop oil protests in recent weeks. It comes as 2 people were arrested after targeting several major buildings in London this morning. Activists sprayed orange paint from fire extinguishers on the Home Office, the MI5 building and the Bank of England. The organisation is demanding the government halts all new oil and gas licences. That's your latest news. You're up to date. More news as it happens. Now back to Patrick.
Welcome back, everybody. Patrick Christys here on GB News Live. We're going live now to the House of Commons, where Suella Braverman is going to be talking.
Order. Let's just make clear from the beginning, this is a very serious statement on a serious matter that is affecting a lot of people, and the Home Secretary will be heard with dignity. Home Secretary.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. With permission, I would like to make a statement about asylum processing at Manston and the incident in Dover yesterday. At around 11:20 a.m. on Sunday, police were called to Western Jetfoil. Officers established that 2 to 3 incendiary devices had been thrown at the Home Office premises. The suspect was identified, quickly located at a nearby petrol station, and confirmed dead. The Explosive Ordnance Disposal Unit attended to ensure there were no further threats. Kent Police are not currently treating this as a terrorist incident. Fortunately, there were only 2 minor injuries, but this is a shocking incident, and my thoughts are with all of those who are affected. Madam Deputy Speaker, I have received regular updates from the police. While I understand the desire for answers, investigators must have the necessary space to work. I know the whole House will join me in paying tribute to everyone involved in the response, including the emergency services, military, border force, immigration enforcement, and the asylum intake unit. Madam Deputy Speaker, my priority remains the safety and the well-being of our teams and contractors, as well as the people in our care. Several hundred migrants were relocated to Manston yesterday to ensure their safety. Western Jetfoil is now fully operational again. I can also inform the House that my right honourable friend, the Minister for Immigration, visited the Manston site yesterday, and that I will visit shortly. My right honourable friend was reassured by the dedication of staff as they work to make this site safe and secure while suitable onward accommodation is found. As members will be aware, we need to meet our statutory duties around detention and also fulfil legal duties to provide accommodation for those who would otherwise be destitute. We also have a duty to the wider public to ensure that anyone who has entered our country illegally undergoes essential security checks and is not immediately free to wander around local communities with no fixed abode. When we face so many arrivals so quickly, it is practically impossible to procure over 1,000 beds at such short notice. Consequently, we have recently expanded the site and are working tirelessly to improve facilities. There are, of course, competing and heavy demands on housing stock, including for Ukrainians, Afghans, and social housing. We are negotiating with accommodation providers. I continue to look at all available options to overcome the challenges we face with supply. This is an urgent matter, Madam Deputy Speaker, which I will continue to oversee personally. I will now turn to our immigration and asylum system more widely. Let me be clear. This is a global migration crisis. We have seen an unprecedented number of attempts to illegally cross the channel in small boats. Some 40,000 people have crossed this year alone, more than double the number of arrivals by the same point last year. Not only is it unnecessary, because many have come from another safe country, it is lethally dangerous. We must stop it. It is vital that we dismantle the international crime gangs behind this phenomenon. Cooperation with the French has stopped over 29,000 illegal crossings since the start of the year, twice as many as last year, and destroyed over 1,000 boats. And our UK-France Joint Intelligence Cell has dismantled 55 organised crime groups since it was established in 2020. The National Crime Agency is at the forefront of this fight. Indeed, NCA officers recently joined what is believed to be the biggest ever international operation targeting smuggling networks. This year has seen a surge in the number of Albanian arrivals, Madam Deputy Speaker. Many of them, I'm afraid to say, abusing our modern slavery laws. We are working to ensure Albanian cases are processed and individuals are removed as swiftly as possible, sometimes within days. The Rwanda Partnership will further disrupt the business model of the smuggling gangs and deter migrants from putting their lives at risk. I'm committed to making that partnership work. Labour want to cancel it. While we will continue to support the vulnerable via safe and legal routes, people coming here illegally from safe countries are not welcome and should not expect to stay. Where it is necessary to change the law, we will not hesitate to do so. I share the sentiment that has been expressed by members from across the House who want to see cases in the UK dealt with swiftly. Our asylum transformation programme will help bring down the backlog. It is already having an impact. A pilot in Leeds reduced interview times by over a third and has seen productivity almost double. We are also determined to address the wholly unacceptable situation, which has left taxpayers with a bill of £6.8 million a day for hotel accommodation. And let me set out to the House a situation that I found when I arrived as Home Secretary in September at the Home Office. I was appalled to learn that there were over 35,000 migrants staying in hotel accommodation around the country at exorbitant cost to the taxpayer. I instigated an urgent review.
Order! Home Secretary.
I pushed officials to identify accommodation options which would be more cost-effective and delivered swiftly while meeting our legal obligations to migrants. I've held regular operational meetings with frontline officials and have been energetically seeking alternative sites. But I have to be honest, this takes time and there are many hurdles. I foresaw the concerns at Manston in September and deployed additional resource and personnel to deliver a rapid increase in emergency accommodation. To be clear, like the majority of the British people, I am very concerned about hotels, but I have never blocked their usage. Indeed, since I took over, 12,000 people have arrived, 9,500 people have been transferred out of Manston or Western Jetfoil, many of them into hotels. And I've never ignored legal advice. As a former Attorney General, I know the importance of taking legal advice into account. At every point, Madam Deputy Speaker, I have worked hard to find alternative accommodation to relieve the pressure at Manston. What I have refused to do is to prematurely release thousands of people into local communities without having anywhere for them to stay. That is not just the wrong thing to do, Madam Deputy Speaker. That would be the worst thing to do. For the local community in Kent, for the safety of those under our care, and for the integrity of our borders. The government is resolute in our determination to make illegal entry to the UK unviable. It is unnecessary, lethally dangerous, unfair on migrants who play by the rules, and unfair on the law-abiding, patriotic majority of British people. It is also ruinously expensive, and it makes all of us less safe. Madam Deputy Speaker, as Home Secretary, I have a plan to bring about the change that is so urgently needed to deliver an immigration system that works in the interests of the British people. And I commend this statement to the House.
Shadow Home Secretary Yvette Cooper.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Can I thank the Home Secretary for her statement? Yesterday's petrol bomb attack on the Western Jetfoil Centre was truly appalling. I'm sure the whole House will condemn it in the strongest possible terms. And I echo the Home Secretary's tribute to the emergency services and Border Force staff who responded. But I must ask her, can she tell me whether counter-terror police and counter-extremism units are involved in the investigation? It doesn't make sense for them not to be. Why are they not? Turning to the dreadful conditions at Manston, 4,000 people are now on a site designed to accommodate 1,600 people, with some families there for weeks. Conditions that have been described as inhumane, with risks of fire, disorder and infection. There are confirmed diphtheria outbreaks, reports of scabies and MRSA outbreaks, also reports of outbreaks of violence and untrained staff. She said nothing about what she was doing to address those immediate public health crises and also the issues for untrained staff. Behind these are deeper failures in the government's policies on asylum and channel crossings. Decision-making has collapsed. The Home Office took just 14,000 initial asylum decisions in the last 12 months, compared to 28,000 6 years ago. 96% of the small boat arrivals last year have still not had a decision, and initial decisions alone are taking more than 400 days on this Conservative government's watch. Can she confirm that the Nationalities Borders Bill and changes to immigration rules have in fact added further bureaucracy and delays, leading to tens of thousands more people waiting in asylum accommodation and more than £100 million extra on asylum accommodation bills because their policies are pushing up the use of hotels and the increase in delays? There's also been a total failure to prevent a huge proliferation of gangs in the Channel. Why has the Home Secretary refused our calls for a major new National Crime Agency unit with hundreds of additional specialist officers to work with Europol and others to crack down on the gangs, as well as the urgent work needed with France to get a proper agreement in place? And can she also confirm on the Rwanda plan that she has spent an extra £20 million on top of the £120 million already spent on a policy that she has herself described as failing and that her officials have described as unenforceable and with a high risk of fraud? And isn't it now time to drop this unethical and unworkable scheme and put the money into tackling the backlogs and tackling the criminal gangs instead? And let me ask her about her own decisions, which are there are very serious allegations now being reported that the Home Secretary was warned by officials and other ministers she was acting outside the law by failing to provide alternative accommodation. Can she confirm that she turned down plans, contingency plans that she was offered that would have reduced overcrowding, as the reports say? There are also legal obligations, including under the 1999 Act and the 2018 regulations. Can she confirm she was advised repeatedly that she was breaking the law by failing to agree to these plans? One of these meetings on Manston was on the 19th of October. Can she confirm she refused these proposals on that date? It was the same day that she broke sections 2.3 and sections 1.4 of the Ministerial Code. So can she confirm, or can she tell us whether in fact she breached the Ministerial Code, which provides for ministers abiding by the law? Did she breach the Ministerial Code 3 times in a single day? And how is anyone supposed to have confidence in her as a Home Secretary with these serious issues? She referred in her statement to security checks. These are very important, but her statement is undermined by her own disregard for security. Her letter today makes clear that the incident over which she resigned was not a one-off, and contrary to her previous claims to have reported the breach rapidly as soon as she realised, she instead had to be challenged several times by one of her colleagues. She has also not answered the crucial questions about security breaches while she was Attorney General. Can she tell us whether she was involved in a leak to the Telegraph, reported in the Telegraph on the 21st of January, about information about Attorney General action on a case involving the security service? Has she sent any other government documents by WhatsApp, Telegram or other social media? And given that it's been less than a week since she was reappointed, and less than a fortnight since she was first forced to resign for breaching the Ministerial Code, and every day since her reappointment there have been more stories about possible security or Ministerial Code breaches, how is anybody supposed to have confidence in her, given the serious responsibilities of the Home Secretary to stand up for our national security, for security standards and for public safety? The Prime Minister promised that this would be a government of integrity, of professionalism and of accountability. Isn't the Home Secretary letting everyone down and failing on all of these counts?
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. To pick up on some of the specific points that the Honourable Lady mentions, I'm not going to comment on any details relating to this specific case or the individual under consideration. But there has been clear work afoot with the NCA and all partners to try and tackle the problem of illegal migration. I'm very encouraged by the relationship that we have built with the French, and I'm grateful to the French authorities for their real commitment and work on tackling this problem. But it's absolutely clear that, as I made clear in my statement, that on no occasion did I block hotels or veto advice to procure extra and emergency accommodation. Actually, the data and the facts are that on my watch, since the 6th of September, over 30 new hotels were agreed, which would provide over 4,500 additional hotel bed spaces, which will be brought into use. Since the start of October, over 13 new hotels will provide over 1,800 additional hotel bed spaces. So, and also since the 6th of September, 9,000 migrants have left Manston, many of them heading towards hotel accommodation. Those are the facts. I encourage the Right Honourable Lady to stick to the facts and not fantasy. Madam Deputy Speaker, however, she raises some other points, and I would just like to say this, that my letter to the Home Affairs Select Committee sent today addresses all of the matters that she has just raised transparently and comprehensively. I've been clear that I made an error of judgment. I apologised for that error. I took responsibility for it and I resigned. But, Madam Deputy Speaker,
does the House want to hear what the Home Secretary has to say? Home Secretary.
I apologise for the error. I took responsibility, Madam Deputy Speaker, and I resigned for the error. But let's be clear about what's really going on here, Madam Deputy Speaker. The British people deserve to know which party is serious about stopping the invasion on our southern coast and which party is not. Some 40,000 people have arrived on the south coast this year alone. many of them facilitated by criminal gangs, some of them actual members of criminal gangs. So let's stop pretending that they are all refugees in distress. The whole country knows that that is not true, and it's only the honourable members opposite who pretend otherwise. Madam Deputy Speaker, we need to be straight with the public. The system is broken. Illegal migration is out of control, and too many people are more interested in playing political parlour games, covering up the truth, than solving the problem. I, Madam Deputy Speaker, am utterly serious about ending the scourge of illegal migration, and I am determined to do whatever it takes to break the criminal gangs and fix our hopelessly lax asylum system. That, Madam Deputy Speaker, is why I am in government, and that is why there are some people who would prefer to be rid of me. Well,
order! I should just point out that I can hear who's making the noise, and it'll be a long time before they're called to ask a question. Secretary of State.
Madam Deputy Speaker, let them try. I know that I speak for the decent, law-abiding, patriotic majority of British people from every background that wants safe and secure borders. Labour is running scared that this party might just deliver them.
Sir Roger Gale.
Madam Deputy Speaker, will you allow me first to express my condolences to the families of those affected by the incident at Dover, and particularly the family of the man who was responsible, who had very severe mental health difficulties. I think our thoughts ought to be with all of them. Madam Deputy Speaker, can I also thank my right honourable friend, the Minister of State, for taking the trouble and the time to come yesterday to see the facilities at Manston for himself and to greatly understand the problems that we've been facing. And can I thank the staff at Manston for the incredible dedication that they've been showing under very difficult circumstances. They are doing a superb job, and I hope everybody understands that. Madam Deputy Speaker, the facility at Manston, the asylum processing facility, was opened in January to take 1,500 people and to process them daily in not more than 48 hours, but mainly in 24 hours. That facility operated absolutely magnificently and very efficiently indeed until 5 weeks ago, when I'm afraid the Home Secretary took the policy decision not to commission further accommodation. And it is that has led to the crisis at Manston. Will my right honourable friend, the Home Secretary, now give the House an assurance, first, that the adequate accommodation will be provided to enable the Manston facility to return to its previous work? Will she honour the undertaking given by the Right Honourable Lady, the Member for Witham, and my honourable friend, the Member for Corby, who have indicated that this would be a temporary facility handling only 1,500 people per day, and that it would not be a permanent residence? And will she give a further undertaking that under no circumstances will Manston be turned into a permanent refugee camp?
Well, I thank my honourable friend for his commitment to safeguarding the people who are at Manston and representing his local constituents in the area. And I was very pleased to meet with him a few weeks ago to hear from him about the situation at Manston. As I said, I just must gently correct him, however. On no occasion have I blocked the procurement of hotels or alternative accommodation to ease the pressure on Manston. I'm afraid that simply isn't true. And I'll repeat it again, but since September the 6th, when I was appointed, over 30 new hotels have been agreed to. They would provide over 4,500 additional hotel bed spaces, many of those available to the people in Manston. Also, since the 6th of September, over 9,000 people have left Manston, many of those heading towards hotels. So on no occasion have I blocked the use of hotels. And I would just gently refer members of the House who seem to be labouring under that misapprehension to the Home Affairs Select Committee session last week, where officials and the various frontline professionals who've been working with me on this issue confirm that we've been working energetically to procure alternative accommodation urgently for several weeks now. There are procedural and resource difficulties and challenges in doing that quickly. I would very much like to get alternative accommodation delivered more quickly, but we are working at pace to deliver contingency accommodation to deal with this acute problem.
Stuart MacDonald.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker. I thank the Home Secretary for her statement, and I join the whole House in condemning the frightening attack at Western Jetfoil, in sending our sympathy to all those who were impacted, and indeed our thanks to all who responded so professionally. But, Madam Speaker, responsibility for the disaster and dysfunction at Manston and the unlawful detention conditions there lies squarely with the Home Secretary herself and her predecessors. She and they knew what was happening, including the numbers arriving, and she was provided with advice that, by all accounts, she did not act on. Now, she's very carefully said that she did not block hotel use, but did she at any point avoid supporting new procurement? And if not, why is it that we heard that her successor, or predecessor, depending on which way you look at it, had to intervene? Ultimately, Madam Speaker, what was a functioning facility in the summer is now totally unsafe, and that was on her watch. Looking to the future, what now? Unfortunately, the Home Secretary offers only the same old failed soundbites, discredited policies and nasty rhetoric. What we need is an expansion of safe legal routes, at a minimum reversing the loss of the routes under the Dublin Convention. Instead of £120 million in a disgraceful Rwanda dream, that could have trebled the number of asylum caseworkers working to clear the backlog. And why not fast-forward claims, for example, from the 16,000 Syrians and Afghans, half of whom have been waiting for over 6 months? Make decisions on their cases quickly. 95% and more will get asylum. They can move on and we can free up accommodation. Madam Speaker, on her letter today, last week the Home Secretary resigned, claiming she accepted responsibility, but the facts suggest that she tried to dodge it but got caught. Why else did she find time to request the accidental email recipient was to delete and forget, yet only notified senior officials and the Prime Minister after being confronted? These excuses will not wash. Ultimately, how can one so-called misjudgment last week be a resignation offence, and yet she can stay this week after admitting 6 of the very same misjudgments? She said no documents were top secret, but how many were marked official and sensitive? Did she do similar as Attorney General? How do we know?
Hear, hear.
Madam Speaker, her return so quickly after an admitted ministerial code breach is a farce. It reflects poorly on her and poorly on the Prime Minister. Both should think again so that someone else can get on with the real work.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I refer the honourable gentleman to the letter that I sent today to the Chairman of the Home Affairs Select Committee. I've been upfront about the details of my diary on the 19th of October, cooperative with any review that's taken place. I've apologised, I've taken responsibility, and that's why I resigned. I hope the House will see that I'm willing to apologise without hesitation for what I've done and any mistakes that I've made. But what I will not do, under any circumstances, is apologise for things that I haven't done. It's been said that I sent a top secret document. That's wrong. It's been said that I sent a document about cyber security. That's wrong. It's been said that I sent a document about the intelligence agencies that would compromise national security. And it's wrong. 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 Madam Deputy Speaker, what is wrong is that, and worrying, is that without compunction, these assertions have been repeated as fact by politicians and journalists, and I'm grateful to have had the opportunity to clarify the record today.
Natalie Elphicke.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I'd like to put on record my thanks to all of the first responders to the horrific incidents that happened at Dover yesterday. Constituents working at the Dover facility have raised concerns about the current safety at the site. Does my right honourable friend agree with me that this type of facility has no place in a busy open port like Dover? And can she look at moving it to a more appropriate, secure location immediately? And does she also agree that we cannot keep doing more of the same, paying millions of pounds to the French, but seeing ever-increasing numbers of illegal arrivals? It is now time for a new approach with the French to stop the boats leaving the French beaches, a joint channel security zone to tackle this issue and bring an end to this illegal immigration activity once and for all.
Well, I want to thank my honourable friend for her indefatigable campaigning on this issue, and I've been very grateful to her for her direct input on this issue. This is incredibly difficult. I don't want to, sugarcoat the problem. There are incredibly multifaceted challenges that we have to deal with, and when it comes to Manston, like her, I'm very concerned about the conditions there, and I have been so for several weeks. That's why I've taken urgent action to stand up an operational team to increase the emergency accommodation on the site on a temporary and emergency basis. I was not willing to release hundreds of migrants into the local community. I won't do that, I will do everything I can to find cost-effective and practical alternatives. We need to find many more sites for accommodation and beds. We are looking at all instances, whether that is hotels, whether that's land owned by other agencies, for example, MOD or other government departments, looking at other dispersal around the country. We have to look exhaustively, but it isn't easy.
Dame Diana Johnson.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker, and can I welcome the Home Secretary to her place. And I look forward to her attending at the Home Affairs Select Committee on the 23rd of November, as we haven't seen a Home Secretary since February of this year. The Home Affairs Select Committee heard evidence last week that Manston was at breaking point. We were also told by the Home Office's Director General for Customer Services that 3 hotels were approved 1 week ago when the Right Honourable Member for Welwyn Hatfield was the then Home Secretary. So can this Home Secretary confirm exactly how many hotels or alternative accommodation options she was personally invited by her officials to approve for use during her first tenure as Home Secretary, and how many hotels or alternative accommodation options she actually did grant approval and permission for during her time. And finally, perhaps the Home Secretary might wish to join the Home Affairs Select Committee when we visit Manston again for the second time this week.
Well, I read with interest the session that the Honourable Lady conducted last week at her Select Committee, and I just want to put on record my immense thanks to the officials. The officials that you heard evidence from are brilliant and simply the best in the business, and they work day in, day out to try and get the best service. And I note from questions 67 to 78 approximately, there was a lot of discussion about my involvement and my grip of the situation, and I encourage all members to read that section of the transcript, which confirms on the record by officials with whom I've been working directly that there has been active procurement of hotels. There's been a huge amount of work which has been put on. How many? I will repeat myself again. Since the 6th of September, over 30 new hotels have been agreed, providing over 4,500 additional hotel bed spaces. That's been under my watch. That's been when I've been in charge of the Home Office. And I'm very grateful to all those officials. And I must put on record my thanks to the now departed Minister Purseglove, who has been instrumental in assisting in dealing with this problem.
Craig McKinley.
My right honourable friend mentioned Albanians in her statement. I hear that 2/3 of those at Manston are Albanians. Does she have an absolute figure for that? But is my right honourable friend aware that in Germany and Sweden, that work to the same immigration accords as we do, they allow 0 applicants from Albania? Surely it stands to reason that an EU applicant country, a NATO country, a country that's in the Council of Europe and is patently simply not a war zone, we should not be accepting refugee status and claims from such a country. What is she going to do about that aspect of this problem?
Well, my honourable friend again raised a very important feature which has emerged over the last 6 to 9 months about the prominence of Albanian migrants arriving on our shores, and he's right. Albania is not a war-torn country, and it is very difficult to see how claims for asylum really can be legitimate claims for asylum. I would also note that we see a large number of Albanian migrants arriving here and claiming to be victims of modern slavery. Again, I really am circumspect of those claims because Albania, of course, is a signatory to the European Convention Against Trafficking, the original convention that underlies our modern slavery laws. And actually, if those people are genuinely modern slavery victims, they should be claiming that protection in Albania.
Diane Abbott. The Home Secretary will be aware that one of the problems with the asylum system is the unacceptably long time it takes to process claims. The Home Affairs Select Committee took evidence from the Independent Chief Inspector of Borders and Immigration, and he told us that currently caseworkers, decision makers, are making 1.3 decisions a week. The Leeds pilot, which is referred to, has put the numbers of decisions up to 2.7 decisions a week. Doesn't the Home Secretary understand that this is far too slow? And what is she going to do about it? And isn't it the case that if she spent less time playing to the gallery on immigration and more time dealing with the practical problems, this would be to the benefit of the taxpayer, the Home Office staff that work so hard, and to the asylum seekers themselves?
Now, it's not often I say this, Madam Deputy, but I do actually agree with a lot of what the Right Honourable Lady has just said. She is right. And when I arrived at the Home Office in September, I was very dismayed to find that, as was set out at the Select Committee last week, only 4% of those claims waiting in the system have been processed so far. So we have a very slow-moving system. That is unacceptable, and that is a big part of the problem. And part of our plan to solve the problem is to speed up asylum processing. We're putting more resources behind it. We're putting more technology behind it. We're trying to identify how we can be more efficient. But yes, it's a big feature which is clogging up the system, and we see the pressure playing out at Manston.
Tim Lawson.
Clearly, the situation at Manston's become unsustainable because of the record numbers coming across the channel. 40,000, and November last year was the highest month, so we haven't seen the end of it. And of course, as my honourable friend from Planet South has said, a record number of Albanians, 12,000, up from just 50 2 years ago. So following on from his question, what exactly is the arrangement with the Albanian government about returns? What arrangements is she looking at to fast-track Albanians, potentially in separate processing centres, helped by those Albanian officials we've allowed to come here to assist? How many Albanians have so far been returned in the last 12 months? How many of those Albanians have taken voluntary return payments to return? And of those, how many of them have actually come back to the UK again?
Well, again, my right honourable friend is right to mention the returns agreement, and we really want to maximise the deployment of the terms of that agreement. I think that's a brilliant starting point for trying to accelerate some of the processing and ultimately the removals of Albanian nationals. Albanian nationals are received in the same way as other small boat arrivals, and however, due to the excellent relationship built with my Albanian counterpart, we are able to expedite removal of Albanians who have no reason to be in the UK. We want to maximise that, we want to push forward with that and faster.
Alistair Carmichael.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I'd like to read to the Home Secretary a text message that a colleague of mine received this afternoon from an immigration expert. He says, just had a call with Ukraine that has reduced our team to tears. People are facing losing their lives in Kyiv or watching their children freeze in the countryside purely because of delays in processing their visas. UK Home Office, paper pushing and unnecessary waits are costing people their lives in Ukraine. Ukraine, Madam Deputy Speaker, not Albania, Ukraine. Is that what the Home Secretary means when she says that this is a government taking asylum seriously?
Secretary.
Well, I do dispute his version of events with respect. Since 2015, Madam Deputy Speaker, the UK has offered a place to over 380,000 men, women and children seeking safety, including those from Hong Kong, Syria, Afghanistan and Ukraine, as well as many family members of refugees.
John Redwood.
I strongly support all that the Home Secretary said in her opening statement. She spoke for the nation in saying we need to control this problem, and she spoke for all those caught up in these tragic events. So I hope that all men and women of goodwill will get behind her, and that the Home Office will fully support her in making sure we can speed up processing and in returning all those illegal economic migrants to the safe countries they came from.
Secretary.
My right honourable friend speaks a lot of sense, as always, and he's right. The British people have had enough of an out-of-control borders system, and it's incumbent on this government, and I know for a fact that this Prime Minister takes this issue extremely seriously, and I know that he will leave no stone unturned until the problem is fixed.
Stella Christys.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. There is nothing patriotic about making children suffer, but that is exactly what is happening as a direct result of this Home Secretary's failure to get to grips with processing asylum. She talks as if the hotels are somehow a better option. In my constituency, there is one with 150 children in, squeezed alongside another 350 adults, 7 or 8 to a room. No notice to the local authority they would be placed there. No cooking facilities. No school places for these primary school-aged children. No clothes for most of them, especially for the winter weather. No play facilities, if they are allowed out at all, of these prisons. No safeguarding, as far as any of us can see. If the Home Secretary is so confident that this is meeting her duty of care on behalf of this country, then will she publish the contract requirements for how children are housed in hotels and the precise details of the sorts of services they
I don't know about you, ladies and gentlemen. That was Home Secretary Suella Braverman speaking in the House of Commons, facing a bit of a barrage there from the likes of Yvette Cooper and Stella Creasy. Nice to see her without the baby in tow there for once. But I was getting increasingly more and more angry about that. I don't know about you. Get in touch. I was getting more and more wound up. If you could have seen me here between the scenes, I was shouting at my television set like an old angry man in front of the football. I mean, is it just me, or are we all missing the point here? OK, it's all very well and good Labour standing up and going, didn't you break the ministerial code, maybe you should go? Isn't that ignoring the actual issue, the actual problem? If Suella Braverman goes over whether or not she broke the ministerial code however long ago it was, we just end up with someone else in there with the same problem, and I'm not hearing any solutions. You know, did you break the ministerial code? Should you resign? Why haven't you rolled out the red carpet for people who are coming here illegally, is basically what I was hearing there. Completely ignoring the fact that we need to stop accepting some of these people who are coming over from Albania, who have every intention to enter the illegal economy, that we have got no way of keeping tabs on whatsoever. That problem doesn't go away whether or not Suella Braverman resigns over breaking the ministerial code. I must say, just to summarise a little bit of it, Suella Braverman there saying she is pleased with our relationship with the French. I must say that was a point where I disagreed with Suella quite vehemently there, and indeed Natalie Elphicke, the MP at Dover, raised that exact point. It is not working when it comes to our relationship with the French. If we are in a relationship with the French, it appears to be an abusive one, because we're lobbing them millions and millions of pounds and just getting a load more migrants in return. In fact, Cooper said that Suella Braverman, and this I thought was a key point, something that I hope doesn't fly under the radar, didn't go unnoticed by you at home. In fact, Cooper saying that Suella Braverman wasn't providing enough hotels and accommodation for these people. Well, Suella Braverman hit back. She said, it's an invasion. She used the word invasion. Our south coast is being invaded, Suella said, and appeared to make absolutely no apologies whatsoever for the fact that she didn't want to commandeer more hotels at taxpayers' expense, £6.7 million a day, by the way, for the ones that are already here. She didn't want to necessarily start expanding some of these detention centres. There is a massive, massive elephant in the room at the minute that isn't being spoken about, and people think this is just some kind of magic thing. People are blaming the Conservative government, I think, for saying, well, you're not caring for these people. The fact is there are more people coming than we can actually manage at the moment, and this leads one place and one place only, ladies and gentlemen. Tent cities. I'm telling you, we are going to end up now, the only place, the only way that we can deal with this number of people, with the current facilities that we've got, is if we start popping tents up left, right and centre across the country. I believe that joining me now live from Westminster is our political editor, Darren McCaffrey. Darren, would you mind just summarising what's been going on there? I mean, I suppose it's still happening, isn't it? But Suella Braverman, I mean, taking some quite interesting questions from Yvette Cooper, most of which appear to focus on the ministerial code.
Quite spicy. We promised it was going to be spicy, didn't we, Patrick, leading up to that statement from Suella Braverman. I think there's a few things I would take away from it. First of all, my word, you would not want to be Priti Patel watching that statement. If you were shouting at the TV screen, she must have been roundly throwing bricks at that TV screen, given the fact that essentially Suella Braverman said that when she went into the Home Office, it was a complete and utter mess, that things were in a very bad way indeed, her claim. But given the fact that Priti Patel was a Conservative, and in fact the Conservatives have been in power since 2010, to simply say, I think she said that that things are not in a good way, it's pretty much dumping on the people who've been Home Secretary before, as I say, mainly Conservatives, which I kind of think is slightly extraordinary. As you say, though, she did go on to defend the agreement with France, and I think this is because we are likely to see a further deal between the French and the UK. Now, why is that? Well, the government would make the case, and Liz Truss did this, Rishi Sunak seemed to be making the same case, that this will not be solved by one silver bullet. It is part of a kind of wider scope of trying to do things with many different prongs to it, and one of them has to be clearly a deal with France, they would say, because 95% of people crossing the English Channel are doing so from France. Suella Braverman came up with a statistic there. I think that some 29% of crossings in the last year have been prevented by the French authorities. In saying that, you know, the big claim I think that Labour are making, and we heard Diane Abbott and Suella Braverman almost in agreement on this, is processing claims more quickly, because clearly one of the problems Britain has at the moment in terms of trying to cope with the sheer numbers of people is that they do not have the hotel rooms, or if they do, they cost a lot of money because there are a lot of people in the system, and that's because it takes not weeks or months but sometimes years to process these claims. It is much less in many other European countries who actually deal with greater numbers of asylum claims, and I think the government will have to push and put greater resources into all of that. And just in terms of the politics, very briefly, Patrick, in regards to what was said and when and what emails were sent and that sort of stuff, it was clear Suella Braverman feels that she has made a mistake and apologised. I think where she may now be in trouble is she was also very clear that she has not blocked any expansion of hotel rooms to deal with this crisis. She repeated that time and time again. She claimed that Labour and the media are misreporting that. We'll have to see. We'll have to see if there is evidence that she has gone against Home Office advice when it comes to extra hotel rooms. I think she will have to go. She claims it's a false news story and it's been misreported. Okay. That is, I think, the main thing to watch in terms of her political career from what we've just heard in the comments.
Absolutely, I agree with you, Darren. Darren McCaffrey there, thank you very much, our political editor. Interesting that, yes, OK, if it turns out that she has actually blocked those things when she said she hasn't, then she's in hot water. But I think it would have gone down rather well with the British public if she said, yes, I did block them. All right, I did. I didn't want yet more hotels being rolled out for these people, a lot of whom it would appear are Albanian anyway. Why don't we do what Sweden does, according to someone in the House of Commons there? It's just say that we're not accepting any asylum seekers from Albania. Anyway, Stuart Carroll, who joins me now, is a Conservative councillor for the Borough of Windsor and Maidenhead. Stuart has been sitting on the line a heck of a long time, so Stuart, I'll go with you. I'm sorry it's going to be quite short and sweet there, which is your area is bearing the brunt at the moment of some of these migrant hotels. Talk to me a bit about the resources currently being used in your area and the impact it's having and the reaction of your local constituents.
Yeah, good evening, Patrick. Well, this is a really big issue. It's a national
catastrophe, frankly, and an international catastrophe, given everything that we've heard over the last couple of days. We heard the Home Secretary talk about some of the costs of the taxpayer, the 6.7 million, and also the 20 million given to councils. But actually, the cost is significantly greater than that. You've got to take into account the downstream cost, the opportunity cost. Children's services alone, we are having to look after children in care through safeguarding imperatives, also social care requirements. It's also beginning to put significant pressure on local school places. And we're also having to deal with quite a significant number of unaccompanied asylum seekers. So that's individuals under the age of 18. And even when those individuals will turn 18, they will become care leavers. And we also have a responsibility as far as that's concerned. So government really does need to get a grip of this issue. They need to get a grip of this issue in terms of understanding that the cost burden that is being placed on councils isn't just to do with hotels, which is a big in its own right. It's having an impact on the whole of the local government framework. And unlike national, remember, local got to set a balanced budget. So we're being forced into a situation where we're having to take on these individuals, but we don't have the money, the finance and the resource to do it. That's a good point.
That's a good point to wrap. Stuart, I'm very sorry because I know you've been hanging on for so long, but I've got literally a minute and a half left on my show and I've got to squeeze Nick Buckley in. But thank you very much, Stuart Carroll, there, Conservative councillor in the Borough of Windsor and Maidenhead, basically saying, look, hang on a second, what's going on here? Look at the amount of resources we're being given to deal with this crisis. It's not enough. We haven't got it. It's affecting every single framework of local government. Frankly, and I'm not putting words in his mouth here, these are my views, not his, Britain and indeed local authorities are, I'm afraid, full. Nick Buckley joins me now, who is author and charity founder, Nick Buckley MBE. Nick, thank you very much. It's going to have to be very short and sweet, I'm afraid. Yeah. What on earth did you make of that? Because a lot of people are going to say, hang on a minute, charity starts at home. We're heading towards tent cities full of migrants in local parks here, judging by what I've heard in the House of Commons.
Well, watching that debate has just depressed me. Have you ever seen a debate like that for rough sleeping in the UK? Have you ever seen a debate like that for the grooming gangs and trying to protect working class girls from being raped? Why do we always care about foreigners more than we care about the people who live in this country? And what I noticed really in the House of Commons was it was full of managers. Everyone is just trying to manage the status quo. And what we need are leaders. Leaders who say, I'm changing this. I'm leaving the European Court of Human Rights. I'm leaving this institution because I'm starting again. I'm going to put the British people first. But we don't have that. We just have managers who go, we just need to tweak this and tweak that, get some more hotel rooms. None of this fixes anything. And that was a disgrace of a performance of the House of Commons today. And actually, I'm sorry I've come on because watching that has just depressed me and ruined the rest of my evening.
Nick, your views there are not uncommon in my inbox. Sat here fuming, says Jim. Nick, that was short and sweet. I hope you can understand. I've got to go to Michelle Dewberry now, but I would love to continue this conversation with you tomorrow, if that's all right. We'll sort that out behind the scenes. Nick Buckley, MBE there, author and charity founder. Goodness gracious me, ladies and gentlemen, what did you make of that in the House of Commons? I hope I've got you suitably wound up, because coming your way very, very shortly is Michelle Dewberry, the one and only, with Jubes & Co. I will be back at 3 p.m. tomorrow. And yes, I'm going to hand over now to Michelle Dewberry. Look, thank you very much, everybody. It's been an absolute pleasure. Lots to get stuck into there. Goodness gracious me, not going away anytime soon, is it? Should charity start at home? What do you think?
Well, yes, indeed. It's just gone 6 o'clock. I am Michelle Dewberry. This is Jubes & Co. And we will be continuing the conversation about the situation when it comes to the Channel crossings. Very powerful debate just been happening in the House of Commons. Did you see it? What did you think to it? Suella Braverman, controversially to some, but celebrating by others. She calls it an invasion of our southern coast. Is she right? Is she wrong? But more importantly, Is she the woman with a plan? Does she even know what she's going to do to get in and fix this? And will he, won't he? What am I talking about? Rishi Sunak. COP27, should he be there or not? And do you think you should have to have a degree to become a police officer? That is a conversation that's raging on after a third of police chiefs have written to the Home Secretary saying that no, they shouldn't. Tell me your thoughts on that. But first, let's bring ourselves up to speed on tonight's latest headlines.